Meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have our flag right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is roll call of board members. I'll start with Ron.
Ron Winter.
Jeremy Corner.
Sharon Rupp.
Sonia Peterson.
Jeremy LeBlanc.
Amanda Lacey.
All members are present. Jeremy LeBlanc will be reading our YME mission statement for tonight.
Our mission is to provide a caring environment of high expectations that prepares every student for a successful future and instills the value of learning.
Okay, thank you. Next item is public address to the Board of Education. Mr. Schneider, did you have any questions submitted?
No, I
Online?
did not. No
Okay.
questions. And just as a reminder, when it comes time for you to speak, we have two microphones here for you. There's one on the podium and one right here. We'd appreciate if you did that so that the YouTube, or not, YME TV picks up your voice too, so. So I think what we should do is start with Tim.
Yeah, I think I missed the approval of the agenda.
Oh,
So
let's do that.
we don't, I'm going to go back to item number 4. So we don't have any additions or deletions, but we have a couple of guests that would like to speak, so we're going to move those items. I'm going to move 11.2 and 9.6 up after the approval of the agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. So the next, we're going to skip to item 11.2.
Tim, you
Which
want to
is-
step up to the podium there? This is Tim
Mr.
Staples from Insight. Francis, if you'd like to, you can use this microphone right here. He's going to kind of go through and review the scope of the services he provides. So,
Yep, Tim Staples, Insight Restoration. We specialize in commercial water and fire damage. We arrived on site today after the roof had peeled back and water intrusion had entered the building. Our plan is to dry out the structure, get it ready and back in order as quickly as possible. Some of the things that we've seen today is we have a lot of plaster ceilings above the drop-down ceiling grid. With the plaster ceiling, you know, it's kind of a masonry type product, so it does absorb and hold onto the water. It does take some heavy dehumidification to release that bound water in that type of material. So over the next couple days, we will be determining if it's going to be dried or removed, and based on the results that we get back on the testing, to make sure that it is does not have like lead or asbestos or anything like that, we may move to demolition. The gym floor, we have a wood floor specialist coming tomorrow, and he will be advising us on the condition and the restorability of that floor. There's a couple things is, you know, can it be refinished? You know, I feel we can dry it. It's all about can it be refinished and be back to the quality it's in right now, or before pre-loss, I should say. So we'll have answers on that tomorrow. There is also going to be a structural engineer coming to determine if that plaster, if we dry it, is it going to be structurally sound? And if it's not, then it'll go into the removal side of things. If we go to the removal on the plaster, it will prolong the project a little bit longer because we have to do the demo of it, which will, you know, kind of set back everything, get put back together a little bit. Fast, you know, if we dry it, it will get the rooms can potentially be put back together faster. A couple things I saw like that as I was walking around today, that we have some contents that we need to move out of some of the rooms and like in the above stage, things like that. If we have a place, we can store them inside the building, or we'll move to like a storage container outside. So that'll be a decision that will have to be made on where we're going to kind of store this stuff temporary while things are being dried out. And then the books in the library. Right now, the library is at about a 70% humidity, and it's probably going to be about that for the next 2 to 3 days. So I'd like to move the books to a different room that's an unaffected room, just for 3 to 5 days, while that room, till the library itself gets its humidity down to proper levels. Because what's happening is that humidity is absorbing into the paper, and they're not necessarily wet, but they're getting damp. So I'd like to get those moved. And then if we do decide that the plaster is structurally sound and it can be dried, I'd like to add in a desiccant dehumidifier to the, I guess, west end of the building to do the 3 floors on that side, because the one on the gym side is going to be focused to dry that gym floor. And the difference between a desiccant and an LGR, a desiccant gives a lot lower grain depression, so we can dry out that bound water a lot faster than a conventional dehumidifier. It just pulls out a lot more water per day out of the air. Other than that, is there any other questions on kind of our process and anything that, kind of what we're going to be doing around the building?
So just for a little clarification, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we pay for time and material only. It's not a set contract. So he'll give a report to us about the scope of what he is proposing before we give the absolute green light.
Yeah, so right now we're just under emergency contract, and what that's getting us is getting us stabilized, preventing any further damage, kind of getting things dry that are going to dry up very quickly. And then once we get like these test results, the structural engineer report, and all the things we need in place, that'll determine a demo scope. And when that happens, we'll write up the full scope of exactly what we're going to do and then attach our price list to that. So you guys will be able to review that, and I can even put a budgetary number on that, of where we kind of see where we're going to end up. And usually our budget numbers are really close to where the final is going to be.
So for the drying, do you take a sample of the plaster material and try to dry it down and see how effective that is, or what's the process for that?
No, the plaster itself, we meter it with our moisture meters every day to see where we are and to see how the numbers are coming down. We like to see progress daily, so eventually it's going to be down to a dry standard, which would be an unaffected dry standard. There's always going to be some moisture content in there. We just need it down to the same as an unaffected area. And the way that happens is just through the dehumidification and the air movement and just evaporating it out of that material. So that's we're tracking it through the moisture maps, and then everything's going to be documented. We do this every day, so we know exactly what the insurance company wants. We know the documentation. We know we have to justify everything we do. So even presenting you with the scope and the time and material, the insurance company is going to really review and audit all of our stuff to make sure that, they're paying for, everything's justified with what they're paying for, so.
Do you also address the carpet? Is that,
Yes, so that.
am I understanding that will be removed?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the adjuster how he feels about that, whether we're going to dry that carpet or remove it. I know that the second level for sure is already bubbling up, and that, in my mind is non-salvageable at this point. And being that the insurance company, they're going to match that carpet, so I wouldn't see us getting much pushback on him to just, if we do some of the carpet, that all of it's going to go, because it needs to match at the end.
And how about the cloth seats in the
cloth
auditorium?
seats, yeah, those will have to be addressed too, whether they can be cleaned or if they have to be replaced.
And the curtains?
Same thing. Yeah, I would say all the soft textiles and stuff need to, at minimum, go to a dry cleaner and get cleaned. You know, and if they can't be cleaned, then they have to be replaced.
Right now, is it safe for people to be in there?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing we just have air movement going, dehumidification going. It's not going to be anything in the air as of this point. And when we do move to demo, we will be under containment. So we'll block off the areas we're working in, and we'll use HEPA air scrubbers, HEPA filters to filter out any dust, so we don't have any cross-contamination of dust or anything like that.
Based on the humidity and what you've seen so far, do you have any idea of how long until possible mold would start to grow in those areas?
Molds can start growing. You're not going to necessarily see it, but it can start growing within 48 hours. Now that we have air movement going, it's going to prevent that mold from starting. Even just a slight amount of air movement across the surface is the drying process has started, and we usually don't see mold grow if the material is drying. If we do see anything as we go, we will remove it.
What about any of the moisture that's up above, that, up in the paneling or those drop downs? Any concerns with mold possibly starting up there?
Well, we're controlling the humidity. We're getting the humidity levels down, and we have air movement, so we shouldn't have anything starting to grow. And if we do, like I said, we'll contain it and remove it
How do you monitor that?
by our moisture readings. You
As
know,
far
if
as actual mold areas? So those areas, say up in the paneling, without physically taking a peek or an inspection, is that something you guys take a look at?
yeah, we're going to have to open up those areas. Definitely up in the second level. Are you assuming second level auditorium? Up in that area? Yeah, those we're going to have to open those up. That is it's a foam board. The only thing we have drywall up there is on the clouds that are hanging, and those we can actually see the backside, so we can
Right.
visually inspect those. From what I felt up above that was just a foam, like a 2-inch foam board, which that foam itself isn't going to start to mold because it's not going to actually absorb any water. It's just the integrity of them would be my issue. And then, the plaster itself, plaster does not form mold very easily because it's more of a masonry type product. Drywall with the paper backing and stuff is really what it's going to go for first. And having the drying process started is really going to prevent it from even starting to grow.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Tim? All right, just kind of, Francis and I will kind of give you an update on the rest. We did have an adjuster show up today. So we've been working with him. He's gone around, he's made contact with Tim and made arrangements for the engineer. He's going to go back and take a look at our policy and determine the scope of what is covered under this. A great example would be the trees out there. Are they covered to have someone else remove them, or would we need to do that ourselves or pay for it ourselves? So there's an example of some things. Francis had McDowell in. The towers on the top, those metal towers, vent access. He's going to look and see how fast we're going to get an estimate on those and see if we can get something up there right away, because that could help Tim also, is if we can get our HVAC working, then we can really help dry it down too and maintain it for a longer period of time. So we're going to try and get right on that. He's saying within a day he'll have a quote for us for that metal work. So we might kind of have a way to patchwork it and get our own HVAC going.
We got one more for Tim, sorry. You said you're going to monitor that moisture daily. What kind of numbers are you looking for as a daily drop?
Plaster is a slow dry. It's bound in there, so I would want the plaster to be dry in about 7 days,
Okay.
or less. if it's going beyond that, then we'll have to do some adjustments and some maybe focus in on those areas a little bit stronger with either more air movement or more dehumidification. But if I'm seeing anything from 5 to 20 points a day of a drop, I'm looking pretty good.
What's the end result that you're looking for moisture level?
I'm looking for a dry standard. Right now, the dry standard that I found is 20. And that may be a little bit of a skewed reading because that whole area back there is got high humidity. So my meter is going to, just of the surface of the wall, it's going to read a little bit higher in a drier area. So I'm hoping between 10 and 20 would be our dry standard on that plaster.
Thank you.
Anything else we didn't cover, Francis? All right. Thank you.
All
Okay,
right, thank you.
thank you, Tim. Okay, next item, we're going to skip around a little bit. We're going to go back to item 9.6. Since we've got other people here, we want to talk to about approving adjustments to the school calendar.
So if we could have some teachers kind of step up and what we're looking at is, I think what we would like to do is currently in the calendar, we start school on the 8th and we move to the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. What has been proposed, or the idea that we would like to bring to the professional development committee, is that on the 12th, we do not have students. We wouldn't have any school that day. We would convert that to a professional development day. Currently in our contract, or in our calendar, that is an instruction day. So, any teachers want to speak to that, the importance of that, or what you might use it for? Don't be shy.
I think I'm just going to speak on behalf of the age that I am, and this technology piece has ruffled my feathers a little bit and made me pretty uncomfortable. The benefit of having that Friday, we can have all of the workshop beforehand on how to run something and how to put our class list in and do this and do this and do this. But it's not until you actually get into the heat of the moment and you have your children, and I can foresee after 3 days, at least for me, I would have every single class for elementary gym. I can envision Mrs. Gray needing some help and saying, okay, now what am I supposed to do again? And I just think that if we had a scheduled day where we could get together again and review and say, oh, that's right, that's what I'm supposed to do, I think that will be so beneficial to help us to run a little bit more smoothly as the weeks continue. Because we all know that our weeks might look very differently depending on this virus. But I think the technology piece, at least for me, would be huge and very beneficial to have that Friday. Great way to kind of probably end the week after seeing our children and feeling like you're ready for another new week ahead. So that would be my input on that matter.
Stacy or Daryl? And I want to correct myself. I said September 12th. It should be September 11th.
Okay. Am I on? I think. Yes? I'm good? Okay. I think it's obviously a great idea for us. I was in my classroom after meeting with Rich and Ryan and Lisa today and envisioning how I would actually try to do this if I had, say, 4 or 5 kids sitting at home while we're on live, teaching a live lesson. Where would I physically be? Because I'm not a stand in the one spot person. I'm all over the place. So that everything about how we teach is going to have to change while we're still trying to deliver high quality education. So I think that would be a really good thing. It's like trying to fix the airplane while you're flying it, and then COVID came along, and then the airplane has a mask on it, and all sorts of crazy things have happened to this airplane, and we're still trying to fix it. And in my new position, which I thank you for approving that, I believe it was approved, I think, yeah. My mind has just been spinning today. I talked to a teacher this afternoon, and she was walking me through, she's very advanced in Seesaw, and then I talked to another one about 20 minutes later, and they said, I don't have no idea what I'm doing, how I'm doing. So I think for everyone's peace of mind, just to kind of get together on that Friday especially and say, okay, everyone's who's having this problem with technology, come and meet. We have to take a lot of time in the beginning of this school year and really teach our kids how to survive with technology without us. And we didn't really have that luxury last year, and now we really need to start off strongly, in my opinion. So, but do you have any questions?
And that's your role, right?
Yep.
Okay. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was also not only for students, but also staff?
Sure. Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
mainly
so-
for staff,
Yep.
Mainly for staff? Oh.
Mainly for staff.
because the teachers will have to teach those students themselves. Yeah,
Okay.
no way she could teach 20 students
So if
at 20 different
yeah.
classes.
Example, if I had my first period English class, let's say that, I would have maybe 18, 20 kids in front of me in their spots teaching, and I'd have to logistically figure out how to teach them without moving too much, because at the same time, my lesson's going to be streaming live to the kids that are at home, and I'll be recording it and uploading it so that they can watch that, as well as all the other kids in the classroom too. So that's going to be a really interesting feat as well. So, does that make anything else?
So this day is to coordinate all the other teachers with you and see how things went the first week and the first 3 days, and
Right. You know,
regroup, find what's wrong, and yeah.
when we left after those 8 days to get ready, I felt very confident. My classrooms are all set up to be already electronic. And so I was like, okay, I've got this. And then the first day happened, and second day happened, and then all of a sudden the third day there was many, many issues, and the kids were coming back, and it was just a lot of texting each other and calling and figuring it all out, and
Is one day enough?
I don't know.
Well,
Should we
that's my
start with
question.
one
Is
day?
Friday going to be good, or should we do that Monday instead? You know what I mean? Like,
Right. I don't know.
that, because they'll start hoping to start school on that Tuesday.
So,
And you're asking for that Friday already. Is there going to be enough time, learning time that has happened in those 3 days to gauge it yet? Or is a day the following week, would that be better?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I really don't know at this point either.
Okay, it's hard to judge.
To
Yeah,
start a
this
school
is
year off, I was looking at my to-do list that I
uncharted.
keep from every year. I had 27 items that I wanted to get done in the first 2 days. Because of course I'm like, let's go, let's start learning immediately, and we have to slow down and be really careful with and intentional with what we are doing. Otherwise it isn't going to be very effective and to keep us on board. I can see Friday, I can see, I don't know. I guess I don't know what anybody else thinks, so.
Okay. Something to consider. Like, if that Monday
Yeah,
would be
just
a better
keep-
option, or,
Sonia, the only thing I'd say about Monday is that because the elementary and I think high school shares this, we have Johnston's coming in for picture day. Whether
is that
they're
picture
really-
day that
Oh,
Monday?
picture day is Monday.
I don't know, but that would be difficult to reschedule if it's gonna happen, that would be, stuff like that would be helpful.
Okay.
Well,
How's that gonna work?
Okay.
we want to,
Good evening. I'm
Hi,
Darrell
Darryl.
Refslin. I'm the middle school, high school ag instructor here at Yellow Medicine East. And I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on offering that flex calendar date. Since we're very hands-on down in the ag department and in the industrial tech area, it's going to take a little adapting to get this distance learning or a flexing or whatever system we end up going with, a hybrid, to just get our bearings straight and figure out exactly what's going to be best for the students. I don't want to go too long into the school year because we want to get it right away. And if there's corrections, we want to make sure we make those corrections so that we can provide the best learning opportunity we can for our students. So, that would be why I'd be interested in having it. And on that Friday, we'd have our 3 days. That means we will have seen every one of our students by that time and have a pretty good handle on what's worked and what hasn't worked. And then we can get together with our peers and go over this and make some adjustments that need to be done. There'll be adjustments. I'm not doubting that 1 minute. It's not going to be perfect right out of the chute. Last year we had 8 days to prep for distance learning, and the governor had that come out. Now it looks like the governor's going to let each district kind of determine how they're going to run their school district. Well, if our COVID numbers go up or go down, that's going to determine how we're going to teach, whether it's distance learning, hybrid, or in person. And we're going to need some flex days every once in a while, probably. Maybe this might not be the only one, just so we can make that transition and get it right. So we're in uncharted waters right now. There's no doubt about that. We thought we were last year, and we're probably more so this year than we were last year. So that's my take on it. Any questions?
Maybe not for you, Mr. Efslin, but is this in exchange for another professional development day
No.
later in the year? This
No,
is
I think we really
additionally?
need to be cautious about how we use our professional development days this year, because as they spoke to, I think their time and ability to adjust, we talk about pivoting with our learning plan. We're
Okay.
going to these people are going to have to pivot every day because they're going to be in there doing in-person and distance learning at the same time. It's a lot to expect of them.
So if we take away an instructional day, are we still getting enough hours in?
Yeah, if we keep doing it, we'll get ourselves in trouble. But as I said yesterday, I did reach out to MDE. So far, I haven't seen it my way. I argued a different way the second time. We'll see what they say. That right now they're not going to move on that 1,025 hours.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Are we still using the early dismissal days as the Q-comp days? Is that what they're still being used
they're
for?
PLC days, yep.
Yep,
And
they're
those
still-
will
okay.
also continue
And they have
to
to
be
continue with
important.
those.
Yeah,
Yep.
and they just need them to get together. I mean, curriculum alignment in this scenario could be even more challenging. I don't want to speak for the teachers, but you can nod if I'm correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I would rather, like Mr. Efslin kind of pointed out, I'd rather make adjustments as we go and get it right, rather than putting our head down, getting 3/4 of the way through, and then going, oh, we need to make a change here. Make
So
adjustments
you're
as we
saying
go.
that supports that day?
Yeah. Give them a chance to make corrections, fine tune it as we go.
Okay.
I could even see a need for this moving forward as we're switching maybe models if we have to. I mean, if we would have to add a day or two at the end of the year to make sure we're getting it right as we go along, I see value in that.
The other thing is, if we have to go to distance learning, we get 5 days that still count for instructional time in the executive order. So that's permitted in the executive order. The dilemma would be, how do we do that if the elementary is still here and the middle school and high school go to distance learning? But again, I agree, we're going to have to be flexible. So I think we're going to try and be as responsible as we can with all of our hours, but a little flexibility is important. I know it puts a burden on a parent now for another day where maybe they have to provide daycare or supervision for those 12 and under, but it's a big challenge if we don't do it right too.
I think the trade-off could be quality. I mean, you're just going
Right.
to get a better plan on a better teaching year, so,
Right.
for students.
So this was an action item to approve the adjustment to the school calendar. So at this time, if there is a motion to approve that adjustment to the school calendar, we will consider that.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, there's a
Second.
motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the adjustment to the school calendar to make September 11th a professional development day and not an instructional day. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, I think those are all the adjustments I wanted to make to the agenda. So we'll move back to number 7, consent.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Hins and Mr. Repslin, and thank you for speaking, Mrs. Gray.
Can we get a notice out to parents as soon as, I mean, that's just a month away. As soon as parents know,
Yeah,
I
I'll
think the
ask the
better.
principals to do that right away tomorrow morning. So,
Better it'll be.
and to the staff, so.
Okay. And keep the lines of communication open because this is an important thing, so we want to make sure if you need more,
Yep.
let us know. Okay, so back to item number 7, consent agenda, item 7.1 through 7.4. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 8, reports. We'll start with district report. Mr. Schneider?
Okay, I emailed it to you. I apologize. I was, got to be a long day Friday, and I thought I would have Sunday to send it out to you, but I don't know where the weekend went, but
Yeah.
kind of blew off the roof. Staff hiring, little update. We will have all of the positions filled pending your decisions later here. So we will still have some remaining paraprofessional positions that we will need to fill. So we do have 2 of them on the docket for tonight for approval, but Ryan will still have some after this, just simply because of the late resignation. Title IX changes, I don't know if you're probably not aware of the significant change that Title IX went through. So Title IX is a gender equity law, basically. And what it is it puts the burden on, it used to put the burden on the accused, the person accused of doing the harassment or discrimination more. The new law has reined that back in, causing us to have to come up with a new plan for investigating. So the biggest change you'll notice is Tim will be our Title IX coordinator, and the investigators will be our building principal. We will have a new policy next month for our approval going forward. We'll take a look at it at that time. We have enough on our plate, so I didn't try and jam it in here to this month also. It's a significant change. It used to be that the person that was accused was automatically excluded, and now the burden is back on the accused a little bit more. But the reason I'm not the Title IX coordinator is because I have to be in the part where they can appeal it to. So I have to be at that level. So not permitted to be a part of that, or it wouldn't make sense for it to be any other way. So incident command team. So I've set up a meeting for August 18th for our incident command team. And when we talk about our reopening plan here in a little bit, we'll talk about the scope of what they're doing, but right now I have 2 board members have offered to serve on that. I think that's good. We have good representation there. Sonia and Jeremy LeBlanc have both agreed to serve on that. I've contacted some teachers to serve on that because we will need representation from EMYME, MSEA, also the principals, transportation, nursing, food service, liaisons, students, and our distance learning coordinator. So be fairly big. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at the data and help us determine the base model. We don't really need to discuss that further. We'll get into that when we talk about our reopening plan. School-age childcare is we still have a lot of work to do on that. We just have so much to get done. That will also be part of our incident command team and how that might look. It's intended that our paraprofessionals would staff that. Lisa did a fantastic job last spring. Not too many times am I going to tell you that we're going to intentionally not do as good a job, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do as good a job because we cannot use the paraprofessionals in special ed money to staff that. So staffing is going to be a challenge for us there. I will be out of the office the remainder of the week. My son is moving to Clarksville, Tennessee, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, so I will be working remotely. I have meetings. I'm driving, so thank goodness my wife is going with me, so I can do meetings the whole way down. She'll know as much about, we must have about 3 meetings already scheduled for tomorrow. One's music. She'll know a lot about music and the COVID by the time we get there. So, and then a shout out to the many people that helped this weekend, but I know I'm going to have forgotten some, so my apologies, but Todd Reiches, Scott Peterson, Ron Pooler, and Terry Paulson were here. All 4 of those people made it here, and I only live 2 blocks away. Made it here before I got here. My wife and I got here. And so they jumped in and we just started brainstorming and just started going. Francis would have been here sooner. He probably broke a few speed limits on the way over here. Special thank you to Denise. She has basically been an assistant superintendent, a lot of phone calls. She's called everybody I've asked her to call. So, along with carrying water-soaked boxes. Mark Weberg and his wife and daughter both pitched in, along with Tom Hansen. The hours and flexibility with me and the other staff we greatly appreciate it. You know, I appreciate everyone's willingness to step up and help. And also Lisa and Kevin Hansen, Ryan Luft, and Sharon Rump for your help in helping us dig out. Okay? That's all I have for my report.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Schneider? I'm sure we'll have more later. Mrs. Hanson with the Burt Rainey Elementary report. Aww.
Actually, they're current pictures. And then, if you take one of those and fold around. Okay, I have a number of items that I will try and move through quickly. First of all, just wanted to let everyone know that a lot of our summer programming for preschool has come to an end. And I have mentioned this before, but a huge kudos to Keisha Lawaji, Angie Jans, and Carrie Shackelford, who really put a lot of time and effort into our ECFE Ready Set summer programming. They ran a variety of grab-and-go bags for our parents because we were not able to have them in the building. Summer Fun had 26 families, 35 students or children. Super Summer Science had 22 families, 27 children. Under the Big Top Circus, 24 families, 30 children. Going Buggy, 23 families, 28 children. Fun in the Sun had 24 families and 29 children. And our last one, which was on August 4th, was Digging for Dinosaurs, 24 families and 30 children. So they provided a lot of extra educational activities for our children in the community. Oftentimes it was typically age 2 to 5, but some of them also included the 0 to 5. Little Stingers, our fall update. We are excited to announce that our preschool is full speed ahead, even with COVID-19. We have made a few adjustments specifically on enrollment, which is always tough to do when we're already filled with a waiting list, but we needed to do that to make sure that for social distancing and safety protocols that we were able to. We have the 3 programs as we did last year, with the most popular being our Bumblebees, which is all day, every day. We have a waiting list for that. Honeybees is all day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We also have a waiting list there. And then our Busy Bees, which is Tuesday, Thursday mornings from 8 to 11. We do have a few openings in that session, and that tends to be typically young 3-year-olds that attend. But they will start on the first day of school just like they have in the past. The other document that I passed around to you is I wanted to give you a quick overview of our reading intervention program, which prior to COVID, we were in the process of organizing, and then we weren't really sure what we were going to be able to do. And then the direction from the governor's office allowed us to continue with this as long as we had social distancing and all of the safety protocols in place. With the help of Mr. Schneider and Cassie, we were able to get that going. We had Mrs. Quam and Mrs. Klaus, 2 of our in-house reading specialists that were able to do the teaching. We focused on, so when I'm talking about students, I'm looking at 1920 school year students. We had identified 13 kindergarten and first grade students who were identified as needing extra support to get them to grade level in literacy. 2 of the 13 dropped out sometime in the summer for a couple of personal reasons. So that kept 11. Each of those students were offered 9 one-hour sessions of Tier 3 reading interventions. Those 9 occurred in June. We took July off, and now another 9 hours is occurring in August. There are a few variations due to a few family vacations, but the majority were or are scheduled to attend all 18 hours. And they are either 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. There have been a couple times when we had 1-to-3, but it's definitely more typical to see the 1-to-1 with a student and a teacher, or a student, 2 students and the teacher. As I mentioned, those are all taught by Mrs. Quam and Mrs. Klaus. They did a phenomenal job of getting a classroom set up under COVID-19 conditions. If you were to walk into their room, each of those students have their own chair that they never share. They have their own materials. And as 6-year-olds, I watched them come in, and they knew exactly what to do. First day they taught them, you grab your chair, you don't touch anyone else's materials. They would take their magnetic letters and their equipment, and they would get to work. Our parents were responsible for transportation. We did have a few that needed transportation, and we were able to support that and get those students to and from Burt Rainey. All of the students that have been participating in August have been wearing masks since the governor's order. And I just want to briefly share a couple points of data on this chart. Of course, anytime you do reading interventions, there's all different kinds of resources or assessment pieces that you can pull. And I pulled one in particular. And so you'll notice at the top, I identified them by numbers, so child 1, 2, and 3. And let's just take a look at child number 2, which is marked by the purple tab. So the green highlight means that that is the level, or the DRA level, that that child entered the program in June. At the end of June, that particular child was still at level A. What you don't see are some of the finer details. For example, that child's fluency rate increased. There were other scores, but they were not enough to move him or her to that level B, which is, of course, what we always want to do. But then as you take a look at the others, you'll see, like, for example, child 3 went from a B to a C, and these, by the way, are just after the June session. So I want you to flip over to the last page where you'll see the green tab. And that green tab shows child number 8, started at a letter G, which often can be referred to as a 1.5 grade equivalency, so that would mean first grade, 5th month. And after 9 sessions, that child had already grown to a 2nd grade level. So 5 months of reading improvement within 9 hours. That particular child maybe had even missed a session for illness or whatever reason. But I think those two show you the wide spectrum of maintaining that level and then some significant growth. And you'll see the data for the 11 children that did attend. Also, I want to just note that the first graders that participated, also we measured how many sight words they knew coming in June versus how many sight words they knew when they exited in June at the beginning. And what we did was we just took total sight words for all of the children. Total, they knew 56. Now that is not per child, obviously, but that is as a whole. But by the end of June, those same students already knew 75 sight words. And keep in mind, this only includes June growth. It does not include August growth. So once we're done in August, we'll be able to take a look at that very first session in June, compare it to the last session in August. Along with this program, I also just want to take a minute and share probably one of the best phone calls that I had all summer. One day during the first week of August, a parent had called in during the middle of the day and said that he wanted to talk to Mrs. Hansen. Nicole transferred the call to me for what I assumed was going to be a concerned parent phone call. It was not. He called to tell me that the night prior, his daughter had picked up a book and had read out loud to him for the first time in her life. She was participating in our reading program. He wanted to thank the school for offering the program, and he also wanted to thank his daughter's teacher for all of their hard work. Any questions on the reading program?
Were the students anxious to come during the summer? Did they
In
like
my
it?
opinion, absolutely. And I'll be honest, we were giddy to see them because some of those students that did not participate in Sting Care, I had not seen since they left in March. And so they're skipping up the sidewalk. They're happy to see us. As far as masks go, we always worry about, okay, how are they going to react? They literally looked at me for 5 seconds, hey, Mrs. Hansen, and off they went. Appeared to be very happy to be here.
Good.
So, any other questions on that particular program? Okay, moving along, we have a Sunday training, which is a reading intervention assessment program that is going to be offered to all of our special education staff at BERT. That will include 12 staff, which includes my special ed department, myself, and also our title staff. And that will be happening, it's an all-day training on site on August 31st. Just a couple quick things that have happened at BERT in August. The 2 pictures I passed around, we have a number of students that are participating in Be a Reader program, and that basically allows they read books in the summer. They get to show up. What I love selfishly is I get to see them. They get to pick out new books, get a little B prize of some sort, and so those photos show the students also appearing with masks to get their books. Our Burt Rainey Sting Pride Committee, which has been actively involved in PBIS training, we're in our 2nd year of training, which happens to be the 2nd time that we've gone through that. We had an all-day training last week. We've had a number of things that we focused on. The main piece was, how do we do PBIS under COVID conditions? And so we identified key things such as blue tickets and white tickets in our discipline plan. We're also working on our welcome back plans and working on a positive reinforcement for our children that are able to wear the masks correctly. I have also had all of my grade levels. All of the teachers have come in and they have met with Cassie and I, and we've gone through the regular grade classrooms and identified how those classrooms can be laid out based on social distancing. Cassie was able to identify items that cannot be properly cleaned, and so they're going into storage. And next up will be our specialists will be walking through that same process. The next item was just meetings for fall. We have had numerous staff meetings at BERT really to plan for fall. Some have been on Zoom, others have been in person, and on the top of the BERT Rainey hybrid plan, you'll see a list of those meetings that staff have been involved in. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention is right now we are working to come up with a plan so that we can get our kindergarten children and parents into the building before school starts. You know, our kindergarten staff has done a phenomenal job with our kindergarten camp, but we were not able to offer that this summer. And so now we're coming up with basically a different way to do an open house, welcome them, but do it in a safe manner for kindergarten, and then next up will be preschool, because we do not want their first time in our building to be on the first day of school. Also, we have new teacher workshop coming up, which is scheduled for August 25th and 26th. I have 2 new staff members, and their mentors will be participating. Leslie Knutson and Jenna Lacey will be participating in that. Otherwise, my other piece, I'll wait till Mr. Schneider goes over his return to learning. I just have our hybrid plan update. Do you have any questions for me? I love the ringtone.
Any questions for Mrs. Hanson? No.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hanson. Next is Mr. Luft with Wyoming High School, Middle School, board report.
All right, good evening, everyone.
evening.
First off, to reiterate what Rich said, just about the activity that we had, just want to thank everyone who helped this past weekend as we see water going all over the building. As we all know, it's been stressful and to go in, but actually today was very productive. We started to work on plan A, B, C, D, E, whatever we're on right now, to try to make sure that we can try to get kids in here as safely as we can. So I just want to thank those people that showed up. They worked hard under a hard condition, and also thank Rich for all his help and leadership, as there's a lot of things going on as we prepare for the upcoming school year. Want to just thank the staff that not only showed up tonight, but also the staff, as Lisa said, that's been in our building to start looking at rooms. There's a lot of things that we're having to move around. There's not as much in the middle school, high school as there is in the elementary, just based on class sizes and that. But if we do go full scenario 1, we will be looking at class sizes in the room that are a little tighter than not so much normal, but if we can't go by the 6-foot conditioning. A lot of our classrooms can fit anywhere from 18 to 22. Our average class size in the high school is about 23 to 25. So I've been able to move around the schedule and that. A lot of creative ideas, things that we haven't thought of where we can put kids at and how we can do it safely. When we get into the hybrid model, it looks a lot different in the high school. There's not going to be too many kids that have to be moving around. Like I said earlier, our plan is right now is to still try to, if we go in the hybrid, to still try to get our middle school in, and even after the loss of the library and the auditorium area, we still think we can do grades 6 through 8 here in the high school building. So more to come on that, but I want to thank the staff for coming in to do that. Just the number of emails, texts, and anything that people are willing to come in if our backs are up against the wall to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch. Just something else that we get this time of year, we get it from our Mars report, which is our financial reporting. Last year in our building, we had 311 college credits given out to the class of 2020 and then also to the class of 2021 at roughly about a savings of $67,000 to those students and families moving out. I thought it was very unique. It was about average what we do, but I mean, that is one of the perks that we do, whether it's our concurrent classes here, our very close partnership with Midwest, traditionally with online, but also with the expansion into the MRV CTE with the 2-year and the trades aspect. Our kids have really taken advantage of it. Our Ramp Up the Readiness program, the work that Robin Henderson, that is now being handed off to Andrea Lewison and Trevor Schulte, is really helping our kids prepare as they walk out of here. As Lisa said too, on August 31st, we'll be having our special ed team as well as half of our English department will be part of the Sunday Reading Intervention program here to continue to support our learners here in literacy. Very tentative right now, our back-to-school night. We're looking at 2 different nights, just due to the outbreak. We'll be doing more of a drive-by back to school, where we'll be handing out masks and Chromebooks and items like that to our families. We'll be doing a lot of the things. Crystal right now is in the office digitalizing a lot of different things to make sure that it's less paper and more hands-on things that we can do. Looking at getting our one-to-one acceptable use policy digital, as well as the online payment store all set up. How that will look that night is we're looking at just a quick check-in by the main doors of the gymnasium. They roll around to the 2 doors in the East Gym that we use right now for food service. We'll have their device, their mask, and anything else that needs to be put out there for that. So obviously, anyone new or anyone that's requesting an access or tour to the building will be allowed to by appointment. More information on that will be coming out. As I said, the one-to-one Chromebook deployment update, we've got that. I want to thank Scott. That was one thing that we did find out. None of the Chromebooks were wet from there, so we have all the devices. They're all inventoried, ready to go, and be ready to be handed out here coming up. We are looking at still hosting our 6th grade boot camp. One thing we did miss last year by going distance learning is having the 6th graders come over. Traditionally, we do a couple-hour tour just to get them familiar with the building, to plant the seed as they come in. Stacy Hins, Dylan Lindstrom, Andy Holt, Kari Coulter will be some of the staff that will be coming in to work with our groups. We'll be following the summer guidelines of holding those pods of less than 10. So when they come in, they will rotate into pods. Still, the biggest issue is, those 6th graders for the first time is learning that combination of the locker. And we want to try to get and ease as much as they can, just to get familiar with the building, and where they're coming to is also to meet a friendly face as we get in and move forward. So that's looking roughly from about 9 to 11:30 that day, and then we always feed them and then send them off for the day. As Lisa said, we have our new teacher, mentor-mentee program. I want to welcome all the new staff to the Hive, but also to the mentors that are going to step up and help out. On the 25th, that day, we'll come in. We do our district kickoff, where we just get them introduced, get them logged in, figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. But then that afternoon, one of the things that we still continue to move on, even with the COVID, is making sure building safety. Mike Toole will be doing a 2-hour session on our ALICE training, which is alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate, which is a big piece of it. We did the extensive training 2 years ago. We did review training, which we will do with all staff again on back to school, but it is a time to get them to notice as those 2 days they come back to get ready, that we can take a chunk and inform them, as well as Stacy Hins will be coming in on the 26th with the mentor, just to begin the distance learning, to make sure they understand the resources and the tools that they will need to move in there. So. And then as we get into it, with the Flex Day in, we've already had the majority of our staff. We'll be wrapping up our staff meetings this week, and then outlining the other time. We do have about 2.5 hours of, as Rich said, it's the mandated reporting and those types of things online, so we get all that done before it comes in. It's going to be a very tight two days when they come in, as far as getting ready for the school year. And then, just as Stacy and Daryl said too, as we move in, we've really talked about it with our staff, with the curriculum development, and I want to thank you for the extra day, is we're really starting to dissect what needs to be done those first 2 weeks, and that stress is making sure they understand how to use the technology, making sure they know the expectations for every classroom, making sure they know how to communicate. That'll be our main focus all the way in as we begin that process with our kids here. So that's all I have. Any other questions? Or
Any
All right, thank you.
questions for Mr. Luck? Okay. Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you.
Next up is YME Activities Report. Tim Knapper, our Activities Director.
All right, good evening. Rich asked me to come in and spend a few minutes just to update you on some high school league activities, where we stand with COVID, and maybe answer a couple of questions if you have any. The bottom line is, I wish I had more information for you. I think you have 2 sheets on board book. One of them is my report, and the other one is the information that was spit out by the high school league last Thursday. They met Tuesday and made a decision to go to a 4-season approach just for the 2021 school year. All that stuff is laid out there in front of you. It was the biggest decision that they had to make. It's missing some of the details which we're waiting on. In the fall, for YME, we're looking at offering the 2 sports that can go, that we offer, are cross country and girls tennis. They're slated to start next Monday. Other fall sports and traditional spring sports can practice only. They're still, those are the details that we're kind of waiting on. We don't know when it can start, when it will end, how many dates we can see those kids. So it's causing a few problems and some nervousness. From what I've heard through the grapevine, nothing official, probably won't be looking at a start date before school starts. So it does give us a little bit of time, but people are getting anxious. Normally by now we're chasing down the 10 kids that haven't registered. We haven't even sent that information out yet for the people who are going out for tennis and cross country on Monday. Winter doesn't change a whole lot. Dance, basketball, and wrestling. They're going to slide in an early spring season where they're going to try to play this fall's football and volleyball. You may have heard some dates of mid-March to mid-May, although that is not official. I think that's been tossed out there. They talked about, May 15th being an end date, but nothing official from the high school league yet. But it will be a season right now is what they're planning on for varsity football, JV football, possibly junior high. We'll have to talk about that a little bit. Same thing for volleyball in the early spring. And then late spring, traditional spring sports like baseball, softball, boys tennis, golf, and track are not going to start until late in the spring, and they are going to continue into July is what I've heard. So that's that fourth season. The fourth season is probably the one they squished in there. There is absolutely no plans right now for postseason tournaments. There may or may not be a section playoff. It may be regular season only. You may see a state tournament. Obviously, you might not see a state tournament there. They continue to explore ideas. The one thing the high school league told us on Thursday when we met was it's going to look considerably different than what you're used to, and I think that's across the board. Same is true for, like I said, we're waiting for specifics as far as from the eligibility committee. We were expecting those early this week. We didn't see them today. I know we were talking a little bit about some other things that we need to consider. The second thing on the list there, and Rich and I are going to have to make a decision. I'm not sure if he's asked for input from you guys yet or not. I think he was planning on doing that. Things like junior high football and volleyball. Are we going to do that this fall yet? Or are we going to wait for that skinny season in the spring and go ahead and run that with our varsity programs? Other things that are more traditionally based in community education or outside groups, people that run our 5th and 6th grade football or 5th and 6th grade volleyball leagues, any elementary activities like flag football. Last fall we hosted a pretty successful 3-on-3 league here at YME. Those are things that we have to make decisions on about whether or not it makes sense to have them on campus. I've listed some pros and cons. You certainly can add or to either one of those. If you take a look, obviously the pros for offering those things. Oh, I skipped the musical. That's another thing that we really have to make a decision on quickly. Especially if we're going to hold it in the fall, that's something that probably should have been started already. Has to get started here real soon. And that's not an easy decision. There's a lot of things that go into that. It's expensive. Are we going to be able to sell tickets to recoup some of that money? Yes or no? I don't know how heavily that weighs on the decision. If we wait until the spring of the year to try that, time gets to be a real issue. Space may be a real issue depending on how the spring is. If we have to have indoor football practices for 3 levels, and then you throw in 3 levels of volleyball, there's about this much space left. It's going to be tough to get all of those in. So something that we've got to give some consideration to and make a decision here pretty quickly. The pros are obvious. They're listed there. At least mine gives kids more sense of normalcy. It gives them that socialization piece as we start school. Some more facilities available in the spring for indoor football practice and volleyball. That's if we have these junior high activities in the fall. And I should let you know, why do we even have a decision? The high school league has moved varsity football, varsity volleyball to the spring. We can't have it in the fall. They don't govern 7th and 8th grade. They don't govern junior high athletics. They've got a position on it, which I'm sure is to follow what they're doing with the varsity, and I'll talk about that in the cons, but it is a local decision. I can tell you I've met with Camden ADs a number of times on it. Right now, it looks like about half are planning on offering junior high sports in the fall. The other half are either absolutely no, or they're waiting for the school board meeting. Often, or a lot of them are tonight to make that decision. So It also spreads out transportation, assuming that could be an issue. It allows varsity coaching staff to help with lower level kids since they've got some free time this fall that they wouldn't normally have. It may alleviate some possible coaching issues. To be honest, I haven't done a whole lot of work. We got this information on Thursday. I don't know, with moving seasons, if we're going to have issues filling spots. Probably not so much with our on-staff coaches, but more than half of them aren't on staff. So if their spring looks different than the fall, it may affect their ability to coach. And then the other pro, if other areas of school do the same, finding contests will be much easier than if we were one of the few that wait until next spring. If we're one of 2 teams that don't offer junior high sports this fall, it's going to be really difficult to find contests in the spring. If half of them do, we'll be in the same boat with half the schools. And we certainly don't want to be the one school that does one thing where everybody else is doing the other, vice versa. Cons, and the biggest one that I keep coming back to, you're all thinking it right now, I'm sure, is how can we say no varsity football, no varsity volleyball because of the dangers of COVID, and then allow our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to go ahead and have a football season and compete with surrounding towns. That's obviously the biggest hurdle and the toughest one as far as I'm concerned. Spectators right now, they wouldn't be allowed at any contest. That may weigh into our decision. And then obviously travel and competition would increase exposure, which could interrupt the academic plan. And I know, talked to Rich about that. That's the last thing that we want, to have activities screw up our ability to have kids on campus for classes. The other sheet is one that was spit out by the high school league. This came out Friday afternoon. I was hoping it was going to be all of the information. This really just talks about the 2 sports, actually the 4 sports that have been okayed by the high school league to have this fall. For us, that means cross country, like I said, boys and girls tennis. There are some stipulations with each of those. The seasons have been condensed by 30%, the length of time we get to spend with kids. If it used to be 17 weeks, they knocked that back 30%. 20% less contests than we can normally schedule, the max allowable schedule. If you read through the small print on the bottom, or the top, it does give us start dates, end dates, and all that information that I just gave you. No invites or tournaments. Even when it comes to cross country, we can only invite 2 teams right now to our cross country meet. I whipped out a conference schedule. We can have 7 of them. It's going to require, it seems like I've talked to people in the West Central and the Big South, which are schools that normally host meets that we attend. Almost everybody is taking that conference-only approach, and that's, everybody's looking out for themselves. It's how it's going to be the easiest way to get 7 events. The drawback is we're probably going to have to host 3 of them, and that's a lot of work to get ready for a cross-country. We might be able to scale things down because you're not going to have near as many kids. The other thing we're hoping they let us do, which would alleviate some of that, is if they allow us to run 3 teams at 4 o'clock, ship them out, and then bring 3 more teams in at 6 o'clock and still, run an additional race. You can just time them up. It can be a bigger event, but we're waiting on clarification from the high school league whether or not they're going to allow us to do that. That would cut down from 21 dates to 14 sites anyway that we'd have to come up with. So instead of maybe hosting 3, we'd be hosting 2. The small print on the bottom, that just in a nutshell says that everything that we've done this summer and everything that we do in the fall, winter, spring, and next summer obviously has to be in line with the CDC, the Minnesota Department of Health, governor's orders, current, any changes, those types of things. So that's in a nutshell. I'm really hoping that the high school league gets us some specifics. We met, like I said, 350 or so ADs meet every Thursday for about a half an hour, and then the Camden ADs meet after that, and we hash everything out. There was probably more questions than answers even Thursday when it came to the high school league. I know they have tons of task force that meet. They're currently broke up, trying to answer all those questions and get information out, but it's difficult because I know we have families wondering what's going on. They're probably wondering where the registration material is. It'll get real busy for us, obviously, once we get that information. We'll get it out as quickly as we can. Questions?
Any questions for Mr. Knapper? I wouldn't want your job,
Yeah, it's fun.
but thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Just a little
Yeah.
update.
Appreciate it.
Right now, what Tim and I are kind of thinking is that the two of us will sit down and figure this out. I realize, and I told him this Friday, sometimes the ADs get a little bit out in front of the superintendents, and so sometimes they have ideas that, we just don't share the same one. And so right now, I'm standing at where Tim and I would make that decision about the junior high football, junior high volleyball. Thoughts? Reservations?
Kind of need to follow what some of the other district schools are doing.
Yeah, if it would leave us out in the cold, yeah.
I mean.
That's why I'm afraid that,
competition.
if we don't have someone that joins us. Here's my reservation. I'll just talk a little philosophically here. I think volleyball and football are very important activities. But if our goal is to get as many students here as possible for our education, I really think we need to tread lightly on this and figure out how this will work. I want our academics to work first. That's my priority. So,
I agree with you on that, Rich.
but I do understand if we can't have any junior high football in the spring, that really puts us at a disadvantage.
Just fall in line with what the other
I don't think it's ever going to reach the point where everybody chooses the same thing. And you know how it is. There's always something better down the road, so to speak. Somebody will do it different.
Tough choices.
We'll stay in touch.
Yes,
Thank you.
please. Thank you. Were there any committee reports?
We
I don't
did not have any
believe
committee
we-
meetings. I think
we've
we're
had any-
due for a committee meeting in August. I think it's policy committee, but that will have to be rescheduled. And I'll get that out in my weekly update.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember any other committees happening in the last month. So our next item is celebrations and recognitions. I think Mr. Luft mentioned two, but my first celebration and definitely recognition is to you, Mr. Schneider, for all of your leadership, and definitely preparing in these uncertain times, preparing our district for returning to school. We appreciate your ability to think outside the box, to field 101, and after this weekend, it's 1,001 issues at once. Your work ethic and your being such an amazing problem solver. So that's our first recognition of the night. There are others that were mentioned amongst the other reports, but some others that were other people we want to recognize. A special thank you to all the custodial crew, especially after this weekend. And in addition to this weekend, all your help in organizing, sorting, and moving furniture at BRE. Special thank you to Ron for working with Mrs. Hanson to ensure each classroom has exactly what it needs. Thank you to Burt Rainey Elementary School staff who have helped with the summer reading intervention program. Sounds like that was a great success. And a special thank you to Mrs. Quam and Mrs. Klaus who provided Tier 3 reading interventions to BRE students this summer. And a special thank you to Nicole Kotek for working endless hours with Mrs. Hanson this summer. Your dedication to the BRE staff, students, and parents is recognized and very, very much appreciated. And again, thank you, Mr. Schneider, for all you do. Okay, next item, new business, is our personnel items. Our new hires are item 9.1.1.1 through .10. And I'd like to take all of those as one motion.
You'll see there's some additional ones that we just received today, so that's why In my update, it's not, my agenda analysis is not exactly the same. Can kind of give you a brief overview. Crystal Enninga, that was approved as part of a finance committee, and so that was $1,000 for social media and website coordinator position. That's done in addition to her duties with Mr. Luft. Integration coordinator, Andrea Lewison. Last spring we talked about Trevor Schulte's position, but this is 3 hours a day of integration, and what this is it's a difference in pay of about $3 an hour for that time on top, and then we take that money and that comes out of our integration dollars. ELA, Samantha, how do you say that? Plasic? Anyway, she is coming to us from St. Louis, so. And then industrial technology instructor, we went in-house for that. The position is basically a 5/6 FTE position, and we can make the other 1/6 a paraprofessional for that, or we can make him an FTE of 1.0, which is really my recommendation, and we'll use him to substitute for that other period and or help co-teach some things. It's makes it a little smoother if it's 1.0 FTE, but I understand either way. Question about any of those so far? If I'm not pausing enough, please
So all
interrupt.
these years Ben's had a 4-year degree?
He does not have to have a 4-year degree. He has an associate's degree, and actually for a CTE, you don't even have to have that. 5 years of experience would be adequate in that. So, and he's got, so this year, because of COVID, we have even more flexibility. His experience is not, he was in that class. He helped build the house for however many years he's been here. So his experience, and he's not going to build a house because he doesn't have a contractor's license. His experience is in the teaching part of it. So it was really our best option at this point.
Well, he's been here since I was here, so.
That's great. Okay. So, and then Dylan Lindstrom is a local homegrown person. I believe he'd worked here in the community for a while, took a little break from school and came back and worked in the community. And so he would be the substitute for Stacy Hens for that 1-year position.
Does that make, just throwing out, does that make Stacy kind of his mentor then?
Yes, it would be. Yep. That
Makes
is
sense.
exactly who you picked, isn't it? So then the next one is Trish Riley. She has some experience with Reading Corps, and Shelby Nielsen. She is also local, and so they would be our paraprofessionals. And then the last 3 are internal shuffles. Dawn Rupp moved from cook's helper to head cook. Jen Lupke moved from cook's helper to basically, or kitchen assistant, to cook's helper. And then we have Lori Knutson and Rachel Steenerson will now each have a full-time position. They were sharing one position. So that's why we didn't really add anybody. We just made those last 2 full-time. Questions about personnel or concerns? You all right with 1.0 FTE for the industrial tech? That's the one thing I want to make sure you folks understand. So that's what Tom Walsh was last year too. All right?
Okay. Is there a motion to approve those staff members for employment and reassignments?
I'll make the motion to approve those new hires and reassignments.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
For the para position that Ben Lisi would be leaving, do we need to backfill that, or is that?
Yeah, we will fill Ben's position. Yep. And that's actually, I believe Ben's a hire from MVCC. So after we approve this, Ben will resign from his MVCC position and we'll go out and seek another position to backfill that.
It'd be hard to find another Ben.
Yep. It's been here forever. So there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Do we need to add the 1.0 to this motion?
I guess I proposed it that way, but if you'd like the clarification, I don't think it's necessary. Your guidance is sufficient.
Okay, good question. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is leave requests and resignation. We have one resignation, Burt Rainey paraprofessional, Stacy Balfney. Is there a motion to approve that resignation?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3, approval of supervisory confidential employee agreement for 2020 to 2022.
You have a red line master, but very little changes in it because really they didn't ask for any contract changes or any agreement changes. We did add the table down at the bottom, so we have that in the future already built in.
Great. Is there a motion to approve the supervisory confidential employee agreement for 2020-2022?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Does the Marlis one just go with it?
Marlis, isn't she on there?
It's just not. No, I'm just move to the second page.
Maybe it's on the second page. She should be on there.
Marlis is on there.
Never mind.
Okay.
I'm going to wait for you to verify that.
Yeah, it is.
She is.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is approval of the non-employee agreement for 2020 to 2022.
So we do not have an actual official agreement with them. Their salary increase aligns with what we, in the past, has aligned with what we give the supervisory confidential employees. And so that's 3%. And so that's what we have offered them.
Is there a motion to approve the non-employee agreement for 2020 to 2022?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is approval of Community Education Activities Director Employee Agreement for 2020 to 2022.
Again, that was what it aligns with what the teachers received in terms of salary increase and insurance. I believe he asked for 2% in each of the years of the contract. So it's a red line master. You can see the changes that were made.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the Community Education Activities Director Employee Agreement for 2020 to 2022?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is approval of YME Return to Learning Plan.
Okay, so we had a work session last week where we talked about this, and I'm going to use, I shared this with you in an email, and for those of you out in the audience, it's on our website too, simply because when I pull down that projector, it blocks everybody's face here. So I'm not going to go through everything in as much detail as I did last week, but obviously our commitments are safety, flexibility, and the quality of our instruction. Governor's plan is local control model with regulations. To look at our numbers from last week, we went from the previous week of being with Yellow Medicine County, we were at 11.15 the previous week. Last week, then we jumped to 12.16. So, but that still allows us to be in person for elementary and hybrid for secondary. So it kind of gives you an idea that our goal is to reduce the spread here and to get as much in-person learning or on-site learning as possible. I'm going to call it on-site because especially in the elementary we can do hybrid under a lot of the same constraints that we have in person. So like I said, our goal is, so I'm on slide 4, our goal is to get as much on-site instruction as possible. We do not need to approve a base model. What we're doing is, so the document I've shared there with you is our reopening plan, and it outlines all of the actions we're taking to try and get us in person as much as possible. So things such as sanitation, transportation, instruction, that's all part of it. So that plan is linked to the board book, and it's also linked on that slide there. Next slide is moving between models. We have to be able to pivot to a different model. We are told that we will have time to be able to do that with a few exceptions. Community, classroom, and school outbreaks can cause an immediate pivot. So when I say pivot, we might be in hybrid and we have to move to distance learning. But that could occur just in a classroom too. It could be a third grade classroom could have to just change to distance learning because there were enough people in close physical contact to cause us to change that. That changing of the model, in-person, hybrid, or distance learning, will be dictated by those weekly numbers that we get, which is based upon a 2-week average.
Rich, what day do those numbers come out?
Thursday at 4 o'clock. So like last Thursday, it was spot on 4 o'clock when
Now,
I
is that
saw it.
public knowledge right away, so do we have, can we check that as well, or is it?
Before that,
No, at 4 o'clock on Thursday, where do you
yeah,
find that out?
everybody can check this. This is put out to everybody through the, they actually have a website called Stay Safe Minnesota.
Okay.
So that's where it's actually located. I shared with you folks, and it's not confidential, that dashboard I shared with you. I don't know if you folks had a chance to look at that, and I feel sorry, or I apologize to the audience. It's a pretty powerful tool. That's one of the tools we'll use with our team, our incident response or command team. That's one of the tools we'll look at. I will also get a confidential password protected that comes down granular enough where we technically could probably identify the person. So you folks won't get to see that, but I'll be privy to that. So we'll be able to know that. In terms of how timely it is, we're still waiting to see, because what you'll see is the Department of Health may find a positive case and then 2 days later might remove it from there after they do some investigation. And that could be for a host of reasons. They could have the address wrong, assigned to the wrong county, but it's not perfect data. It just gives us close approximation. So feel free to stop me at any time. Sanitation, as we talked about last week. We're going to wipe down high-touch surfaces. Want to emphasize to you the number one way that COVID spreads is through aerosolization. That means that's why we're wearing our masks, is because that catches that aerosol, or more of that aerosol, and allows it not to spread around. Tomorrow we're going to have a meeting with our music teachers. That's the big problem with chorus and singing, is they're singing with energy, aerosolizing a lot of that, possibly virus-containing material, and that makes it a little bit more risky than a regular classroom would be. So we'll have sanitizer throughout our buildings. We're going to wipe down our common areas. Water fountains will have limited access, so we're just using water bottles. Mask requirements, I call it mask, but it's actually a face covering requirement because there are other means to do it, but understand the governor's executive order was pretty clear. We need to wear masks. Later, we're going to have a first reading of a policy on face coverings that kind of lays out the expectation for that, so we're pretty clear about what we're going to do in case of some non-compliance. Doctor's notes for both staff and students can be required. If they do bring in a doctor's note, they'll be required to wear a face shield. Instead of that mask, a face shield is not nearly as protective as a mask, but at least it would be something of a little value. We will have additional masks on our transportation and in each of the buildings to try and address any concerns that you might have or people might have with the lack of mask availability. Questions for me so far? All right, Lisa, you want to hit some high points on your procedures?
I think a really important part for the elementary is to remember that hybrid and in-person are going to look very similar to the public. Our goal is to be able to have all pre-K-5 students in the building. As I had mentioned before, our rooms are currently being reconfigured. Lots of items are being removed and desks will be spaced apart. We will have controlled movement throughout the building. We have colored dots that will be placed throughout the building down the center of the hall. Everybody will use the right side of the hall. We have arrows. There's a number of areas that, well, actually all areas are going to have that 6-foot mark as a reminder to staff and students. We're going to be varying some of our schedules just to keep people spaced apart. For example, lunch in the past, it might be, okay, it's fourth grade lunchtime at 11:20, and so all the fourth graders are getting ready, and whatever order they go over, they might walk two side by side. Now it's going to be much more structured where it's one class at a time. And when we talk about cohorts in the elementary, so for example, Mrs. Jessen's fourth grade class will be considered a cohort, and our goal is to have that group intermix with another fourth grade group, such as Mrs. Tanner's, as little as possible. And so they will be going over separately with some spaced out time. We also, Mrs. Gray and Mrs. Jan are putting a lot of time and effort into getting their curriculum and lessons ready for fall. With a lot of outdoor activities, we'll be able to do a lot more things outside with a couple goals, obviously, is to teach to the standards. But in Mrs. Gray's case, we want to give our students as much physical activity outside as possible. They're going to be sitting and moving about in different ways that they have not done in the past. As I mentioned, the students will remain in cohorts throughout the day with limited mixing. We will have recess and lots of outdoor learning as well. I know Mr. Schneider is working on getting us some outdoor spaces that would be able to protect us from the sun and even maybe a possible light rain if need be. We also are expecting parents and families to screen students prior to arrival. Specific questions? We have protocols in place for everything from arrival, dismissal. We're really excited about the fact that our library is going to be able to stay open under certain circumstances. As you know, we've been very fortunate in the last 3 years to have that undergo a significant facelift with more than 1,000 new books, and many more came in, and we have some protocols that Cassie has helped us with so that we can still use that throughout the school year, knowing that we may need to change course at any time. Elementary questions.
I got a question.
That's good.
What is the protocol for a student that, you know, during the day may develop symptoms of some sort? How do you move forward with that?
Cassie, do you want to take that?
No.
So basically what happens if the child becomes ill at school is that the teacher would notify me, and then I would either go get that child training on the aid or be sent on isolation phase, where they would be assessed, and then there would be also put them on the facility as possible. In the plan to it, it mentioned that, but we are requesting that parents provide at least 2 local emergency contacts so that we can kind of immediately down the line.
We call it the north door.
It does, thank you.
So that decision tree that she's talking about is actually, I put it in this presentation. So for goodness sakes, I hope it's the most current one because I forgot to check it today. So it is constantly changing. It should say about the 24 hours of fever-free instead of 72 hours. Yeah. Okay.
The only other thing that I'll just add for Bert, when we did a lot of parent surveys in the spring and said, you know, what can we do better? The number one item we heard from parents was to use less types of communication software. Parents felt like for every teacher there were different logins and different ways to get information, and so that is one thing that we are doing. We have basically we're all going to be using the same program, and so if a parent has 3 children in our building, they're going to be able to log in once and all 3 children will show up and they'll be able to get all of the information, messages, work samples, and so forth. So I think that will also be a positive for our community.
And that's called Seesaw, right?
Seesaw, correct, yes. Any other elementary questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Luft? So just to give you a little heads up, he'll talk more details about it. So yesterday we talked about the use of Granite Falls Lutheran Church. We did go over there and take a look at that facility, and they have a board meeting tomorrow night to talk about what he is going to explain here. So
ours I'll just kind of focus on the middle school first. Just like Lisa said, the plan is right now in-person and hybrid is to bring all of our kids 6-8 into the building. That would require, due to the hybrid learning portion, by still bringing all kids in. We do have to use large spaces like this. The band choir room would be another area. The library auditorium was going to be one, but now in redoing the schedule, looking at it, balancing classes, the one room that we will have to prep to get going forward will be the junior high wrestling room. The junior high wrestling room, as I said earlier, is one of our largest spaces. We can actually fit up to 45 kids in there at 6 foot. So we will be looking at doing that area to do breakout as far as our classrooms. It really affects, as far as teachers full-time, it affects 2.5 teachers where they will be out of their rooms due to their schedule mainly being in the middle school. Our 6th graders will primarily be down, which we call the 6th grade science room. It's one of our largest rooms down on the first floor on the west wing. We can fit up to 23 students in there, and the class sizes coming in will all fit in there. The only other 6th grade class that will be out of that area will be with Mr. Baumgartner. Mr. Baumgartner would be down in one of the band or choir rooms in there. 7th and 8th schedule kind of moves around as well with it, but all those will be in those larger areas too. We are going to be running what's called a HEX schedule. So our exploratory classes for 7th and 8th grade will be on a 6-week rotation. It'll be Spanish, Dakota languages. It'll go down to art, construction trades, ag, and then we're offering a math, kind of a physics, pre-physics with Mr. Herneman for those classes. Those class sizes will all be about 18 to 20 in there, where our 6th grade exploratory classes will be a trimester level, which is about roughly 60 days. So as we get into that, we do have some students that are in the middle school have already opted out for full-time distance learning. All of our classes will be synchronous. As Mrs. Hins might have alluded to, is we plan on doing our presentations live with our kids. I actually demoed it last week. I can't ask my teachers to do it unless I can do it. So of course I fired up the computer, it crashed, and the sweat started rolling just like the old overhead days of when I used to teach. So, but after I got into it, we kind of got some of the kinks out to see how that would look. One thing that we heard from our families, one thing we heard from our staff was to make sure that we had consistency and expectations. So we do plan on running a full schedule on our hybrid. It'll be a 7-period plus the advisory in there. When it gets to high school, it's a little different. We are looking at an A-B schedule, only bringing in half of the high school if we are forced to go to hybrid. Currently right now I'm going through every elective class to try to find a balance. Unfortunately, there's not a perfect balance based on last name alphabet and how the schedule worked out. So if I have 25 kids in English and I go through an average of last name A through L, I might be able to get 12 and 13, but then second hour it will throw it off a little bit. So I'm going through every one of the classes to see, like I said earlier, in the 1930 building, a lot of those class sizes can get up to 18. So by having some flexibility, even if they're off a little bit, and then if we get into the process where it's either through special ed, where the IEP teams decides maybe kids need to come every day or other at-risk kids, we will have room to do that. But those two will be synchronous. The kids will be responsible for logging in at 8:15. Everything will be done through Google Classroom, and Zoom will be the main platforms. Everything will be pushed out through there. And then teaching will go on onto that aspect of it. One of our focus right now is really the response to intervention. What do we do with the kids that do, and what do we do with the kids that are falling behind? And those are some of the questions that we'll be asking through distance learning and through technology, how to support kids and move forward. We did do a lot of what's called the flipped classroom during distance learning, where teachers were pre-recording, or using content already within the curriculum, and then putting out Google Forms to see what questions do they have into that. So that's kind of the hybrid model. Kids will start to arriving around 7:40 in the morning. Kids will come into 3 different doors. We'll have door 16 down by Mr. Petrick here. Will be 12th and 9th graders, and a lot of the location determination is where their lockers are at. Door 19, which is between the cafeteria and Epsilon Gymnasium, will be for 10th and 11th because their lockers are in the long hallway. And then our middle school will come in through door 5, which is the district office door. Each one of them will be supervised, and also they will also have the option to get grab-and-go breakfast. So our first buses come in at 7:40, as I said. They will briefly go to the lockers and then move on to their first hour class and then wait patiently. The second round of busing, we're expecting to come in right around 8:10, probably a little later the first time we run through it. But they will come in and then we will begin classes. If they are self-transporting or being dropped off by parents, we're asking them, if they're self-transporting, to use the designated doors that they already come in. It's very traditional to see our high school kids that do drive in, walk down the ramp and then go into the building at that point. To come in at 8, I don't think it's going to be too hard for our high school kids. 8:12, they're walking in and getting ready to go anyway. And then our parents have been very good about our drop-offs in the front of the school. We'll be asking them to come in at that time as well. Obviously, there will be exceptions, and we'll have to work around people's schedules. We want to make sure we accommodate that as we get into it. We have shortened class by 1 minute, and the reason is to provide 2 different passing times. So like for an example, first hour we have 14 classes going on. We have 5 middle school classes and 9 high school classes. How the passing time will be A and B is half of the middle school and half the high school will pass within 3 minutes, and then after that the next bell will ring and the next people will move. That way it ensures us we have less than half capacity in there. As Lisa said, we too will have signage all over. Our motto is keep the hive buzzing. So Crystal has done a good job of designing the decals that will be in each one with the arrows to keep the people moving around there in there. Also, we've designated every stairway will be either an up stairway or a down stairway, just to keep traffic separated, just due to the number of kids that we pass through here. One thing that we did run into last year during distance learning is, and I think Rich will talk to soon, is just about the internet access. Hybrid learning, we want our kids here as much as possible, so if kids do want to come in rather than maybe using our Verizon or a Kajit system at home and still want to be around here socially, right behind here. This is in the gym area, in the upper gym. Our study halls will be in there. Our study halls will be much smaller next year, but also we'll be setting up an internet cafe where kids can come in, let us know, and they'll be able to use our Wi-Fi, so that way they have a stream. Kids will be able to put the earbuds in and participate within the class during the daytime. So our biggest thing will be lunch. As we talked about earlier, is our lunches will be 2 20-minute periods. So we've gone from 2 lunches down to 4, or up to 4 lunches, getting the kids in and out. I know next week we'll be working on setting up the cafeteria and also it would be the south side of the gymnasium to make sure our kids have social distancing and everything to that point. So any other questions or anything that?
With a closed campus for lunch, is there a concern that 20 minutes is long enough?
We can
to get
serve
everything?
kids quickly. The thing that will happen with serving is the kids they cannot grab anything. Everything has to be handed to them. So by splitting the high school into it, it's about 100 kids in each one of those. Our middle school is about 80. On a typical day, about 170 middle school kids. We can actually feed them in about 8 minutes. They can get through the line that fast. So we're pretty efficient. Obviously, we know there'll be some hiccups at the beginning with lunch, but 20 minutes is about enough. Obviously, we're not going to rush them out if they're still waiting for food to be done. We're working with our student councils to come up with maybe some creative ideas to do it. Every kid likes kickball at lunchtime. So we're also asking Mrs. Hanson's if we can reuse the Burt Rainey playground. We don't know, but just trying to come up with different things to them to do it. Fall time would be a lot easier as we get closer to the winter time. It will be harder to ask high school kids to put boots, snow pants, gloves, and everything else on. So hopefully we'll have some more ideas as we get closer to that time. So.
Is this closed campus thing, is this something that the state is suggesting, or is it just something that we're doing?
No, we had talked about it. Mr. Schneider and I had talked about it, just one way of eliminating the open contact of during the daytime. So it was our recommendation just to close the campus at that time. At that time, I don't know the exact numbers, Jeremy, as far as the number of kids that leave, but the number of kids that would leave, jump into cars together, it could be a horse apiece. You could argue too that much conversation might be happening in the hallway or in the classroom as well. It was just a way of trying to limit one more interaction of going off campus. So.
Wouldn't that also trap? Oh, sorry, not trap. That was wrong. Wouldn't that also cause more kids to kind of congregate within the school rather than getting out of the school and being separated a little bit?
Good. I can see that.
The in-person thing, obviously, with what happened Saturday, that changes everything. Like you said, you've lost about 6 classes and 2 big open areas. So, what? I know that you don't have a lot of detail on it, but what are you hoping that the Lutheran Church can fill for those or replace?
We're hoping to put band and choir in there, because if we use our congregation hall for choir, we can really space them out. Plus, it's got decent acoustics. All right. That we were going to move our choir into the auditorium, so that's one of them. And we're hoping to put the band down in the basement because that's a big open space, and we're asking to also use one of their rooms for storage of our instruments so that the instruments don't have to come back and forth. Okay. The other advantage is the recommendation from the American Choral Directors Association is that they only sing for 30 minutes in an enclosed area. If they would go outside, they can sing for the whole time. But they ask that it's limited to 30 minutes, and tomorrow morning we'll debate the 6-foot, 10-foot thing with the choir teachers because it's in there both ways. But that, actually, just guessing, we're going to be pretty close to 10 foot, putting he thinks there will be about 40 kids in our largest choir at one time.
What about the other 6, like the 6 classrooms? Where
we're hoping to get access to those back. So really, if we can use our fax classroom, let me see, I'm trying to figure out which other ones we have lost. We're pretty confident in Daryl's area down there in the art room. We're pretty confident in that. We're pretty confident that we'll get that. The 2 areas that I'm most concerned that we won't get access to is the media center, which is open air, and the auditorium, which is open air. And those had the most volume of water in them. So really those are the 2 areas I'm afraid we're going to lose for an extended period of time. Accurate, Francis, Ryan?
Yep. Yep. Our backup was the junior high wrestling room. The original plan, we did not plan of using that room into it because we were able to use other spots. So.
if those rooms come back as needing a lot of extra work or demo?
So then our thought is we would for sure be hybrid with the high school, maybe even push towards some method of moving the people out of this 65 building to get our middle school here. So we might take over these classrooms with our middle school and then push our high school into other locations such as our main gym Auxiliary gym, not ideal. We're crossing my fingers, so we're going to get something, because I have no other solution for that.
The tech college wasn't an option.
We just haven't had enough time to check into it, so. I think Denise was going to call. She probably got 1,000 items on her thing. She's going to call and find out who we need to talk to.
My only other thing, back to that campus thing, if we don't really have anything that supports that it's better to close it versus not closing it, wouldn't it be better just to leave it as it was?
The thing that we would have to come into it is just making sure that in leaving is that we have some type of hand washing policy, or, you know, making sure we have enough sanitizer to do that. But like I said, the idea was is just to eliminate one outdoor process of getting into wherever they go, whether it's home,
And
community.
it may have been, actually, we may have just jumped to that right when we thought we were going to screen everybody every time they came into our building. That may have just been, and we just haven't changed it.
Yeah, Cassie, can you comment on that? But
Yeah.
the microphone.
It's just a side note, quick. Hey, Rich, we might have to have her re-speak because I'm getting
So
texts that-
when we talk about an open campus and all of the guidelines that have been given to us by the state,
Keep her up.
you know, the 6-foot distancing that we are supposed to very closely adhere to, the small cohorts, an open lunch period does not give us the ability to ensure that that's happening, nor does it encourage that. You know, like, I think of in a situation of contact tracing, that 20 minutes those kids leave the building, we have no clue who they're spending time with. It's going to make it even more difficult for us because we are going to have to assist in the process of contact tracing if we have a positive in our building. If we now rely on not just looking at schedules and seating arrangements and locker placements, but now we have to rely on how honest those students are with us about where they went at lunch, what they did at lunch, who they spent that time with. And we can't control that when they leave our building. So it's a lot more complicated than just, I mean, yeah, it's good for them to get outside, but we don't want them during the time they're with us at school, we don't want them spending extended periods of time with people outside of those small groups. That's why we're being so intentional about 6 feet spacing, because we're hoping that that will limit close contacts when we have a positive. But once we kind of open up that uncontrolled space, it's going to be really difficult for us to trace back. And I mean, Sonia works in healthcare. I don't know if she,
Yep.
you know, she wants to elaborate.
I
but
do
that's
too.
basically what it comes down to, is that we now give up complete control over all that work we put into all day. We let those kids leave the building and they come back in, and every person they come in contact now is at greater risk. They don't specifically address open campus or open lunch. However, I think with the social distancing, with the 6 feet spacing, I certainly can reach out and ask, but they're going to tell us to apply the mitigation factors that they have given us and the lunchroom spacing and all of that, and I don't see how an open lunch fits into the mitigation factors that they have given us. Because we have no way of policing that they don't get into cars with people that are outside of their household, which is very clear in social distancing, that you remain 6 feet from people that aren't in your household, especially in a hybrid model.
Cassie, like, there'll be enough for that policing if someone does test positive for the people that they spend outside of school, much less the kids in school.
Correct.
So during the day, if you can keep them, you know, on a closed campus, at least you know.
I mean, I just think about what it's going to be like when we do have positive cases and how much work that's going to be with very limited resources here, and how we need to assist in that process. I can't imagine having to, again, like, I'm already keeping track of seating arrangements, locker placements, where they sit on buses, who they interact with during the school day, and then having to add that piece would be difficult. And I will go to the fact that I have no skin in the game But I'm just coming from a perspective of someone that's studied very clearly what all these guidelines are and have consulted with the Department of Health, you know, multiple times a week, and what they tell us is apply your mitigation factors, and I don't see how we could apply mitigation factors in this situation. Like we can when they're in the building, which is gonna be tough too. But it's just another layer of really, really challenging circumstances.
I understand
You
what
want
you're
to
saying.
stay there for a second? We have a few other questions, but go
Yeah,
ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
understand what you're saying as far as, you know, reduce the risk, you know, but these kids have already been restricted a lot. I don't, personally, I don't feel that restricting them at a lunchtime is another privilege we should take away from them. I realize there's risk in everything. But they've already been restricted with so many things that unless the state or the MDE or MDH is specifically saying that we've done research on this and we find that that's a high risk area, I don't think we should be implementing that from our district level. I think they've been restricted enough.
I understand where you're coming from. I do. But if we get forced into distance learning, we're going to have to restrict them even further. And the more risk we take, the likelihood of getting pushed into that other learning model is higher as well. And, you know, I will tell you that we aren't getting specific guidance on a lot of certain circumstances. I mean, choir, we haven't gotten specific guidance on. BIED, we haven't gotten specific guidance on. They are expecting schools to use the mitigation guidance that they've given us and apply it to each of these situations. And I will also say that there aren't a lot of school districts throughout the state that continue to have open lunch. So it may not be at the forefront. And I certainly am more than willing to reach out to them and see what their stance is on this situation, if that's what you would like to do.
Maybe
Again,
this is.
I'm not saying that I was a part of this decision necessarily, because I'm not administration.
Yeah.
I'm just giving kind of the other side of it. Seems harmless, but really it could have a snowball effect pretty quickly.
Cassie, if
Maybe
I can-
this-
I'm sorry, Rich. I was just going to say, if we can't control what these kids are doing before and after school, but if we can control what they're doing during their lunch hour, I think that's going to, like she said, talked about the snowball effect. That's going to, you know, when one of those kids tests positive, so now we have to figure out where they went for lunch, who they affected when they were at Hardee's without their mask on. That's just extra work that we don't have. I mean, that would be a lot of that on Cassie, too.
Yep.
You know, there's only one of her.
I get that, Sonia, but
that
we can't
tracing.
restrict them from still
We're
being
restricting them
kids.
for a lot right now, so.
They
this
are.
is- We are, yes.
We are.
So
For the,
I'm
for
saying,
everyone's safety.
you know,
Yes.
they're young adults. Granted, they still make plenty of bad choices. We all did. But I just feel that we're getting a little overboard with restricting everything. And if this isn't something that the state is requiring, then I don't see us mandating it either. That's just
So-
my stance on it.
So,
And
Mr.
again,
Luft, you
that's
said
not my
20 minutes? They've got 20 minutes.
They can't make it anywhere back.
Not 20 minutes.
Well, then it creates another issue. I mean,
I don't.
I just
then they
think
have
that
to
we're
be screened when they come
responsible
back in the door?
No, they
we're
just have to be
responsible
hand
for
sanitized.
keeping them safe while they're here.
Yeah.
And that would make it difficult in my role to keep them safe. But that's, again, I do what is decided by administration and the school board.
But, but what they're doing is they're driving to McDonald's. In-
The
With
one or
5 people
two
in
that
a
might
car.
be trying to clock and get over there and back.
But we still have to protect those one or two.
We can't put them in a bubble though. We can't
We can put,
make that bad choice and run all the way to McDonald's. We can't do it.
we can if we close lunch.
But then so you're gonna penalize the other hundreds
I don't look at it
But
as a penalty. I look at it
I
as the
think it's
state has
keeping
given
them
us
safe.
very clear guidelines to follow to mitigate this situation. And I don't see how we can enforce, particularly in a hybrid model. I don't know how we can ensure that those mitigation factors that are required of us would be followed during the school day, during the time we're responsible for them. I don't see how we can do that if we allow them to leave the premises. I don't know what, I mean, again, I can reach out to the Department of Health and see if they've considered this angle and what their stance would be, but just in my dealings with them, I can see them saying, you are expected to apply your mitigation factors
Well,
and make the decision that falls best within.
Part of the issue is we haven't went out and done that research, but we've already made this decision to close the campus. So if we're gonna make this decision, then the next time we need to come with, be prepared. Go out and actually, and ask that question before we change up what we've done.
I think the only way we can move on now is to turn this over to the incident command team or the YME reopening
I
team.
would like to volunteer for the command team.
Okay. It'd be 3 board members would be on.
One more thing.
Yeah, I
Jeremy,
think-
I have a 15-year-old too, and he is not happy about this decision, I can tell you that. But we were quarantined in our house for 14 days as well, and he was not happy about that, but he had to follow those rules, just like you would have to if you're in school. So that's something I agree with Cassie for. You know, it's going to be hard enough to keep these kids what they do before and after school if we can just control them while they are in that school day. I think that is a positive thing for us.
And I think it's
Jeremy, you had
important that
something to
whatever
say.
decision is made, that we in-house do what we can to make those students feel like it's not a punishment, just like everything else. I mean, we hate wearing masks, but we have to do it. I mean, we don't like that the kids can't congregate at their lockers. I mean, I hate it. This is not what education, what school is supposed to look like to all of us. But it's just in how we approach it, and it's how we react within the building and in the community of how we present this to kids. Like, this is just a short time. Like, you know, we just have to make it through and try to do the best we can, and hopefully it will be just a short time.
Yeah.
And maybe
I mean,
next year, you know, we can look at this again next year, hopefully.
These-
Yeah.
Whatever
you know,
decision
get
is
back.
made.
Seniors don't have next year.
I
so
understand that.
They only
I
have
understand
this.
that, but they haven't had
So
a lot.
this isn't-
They're,
I disagree. You can say whatever you want about a 15-year-old, but we're restricting them to the point where we're not even allowing them to make choices as young adults.
Jeremy, do you have something
Yeah,
you want to add?
I think the question gets back to we need to do what's best for the students. And what's best for the students is keeping them in school. And there's being a lot of sacrifices that are being made. And if this is just one more sacrifice that we have to do to keep the kids in school and to keep our staff to be able to run the school efficiently and do the learning, that's just what we're going to have to do. And the seniors last year lost out on a lot too, and unfairly had to ask that of them. We may have to do that again this year.
But how do we know this is something we have to do? That's what I'm asking. The state hasn't said this is something you have to do. So
I
Not
where is that all
directly.
coming from?
I think our staff here, our professionals here are saying, this is something we need to do for us to run our school properly.
I agree
I
with
think
that.
we need to listen to that.
Well, I'm saying that I disagree, and I think it's something that should be looked at, and if I'm the only one, that's fine. But I'm just throwing that out there that I don't think we need to put so many restrictions on them to take away what freedom, little bit of freedom they still have.
It's just a lunch.
And I think what Cassie's saying is that they, although they have not addressed this specifically,
It's not just a lunch.
I think indirectly, by giving us other guidelines, they're having us say, keep them in school. This is,
I haven't.
we can't apply other guidelines if we let them leave during the day. I think that's what she's saying. Yeah.
We can't restrict everything we do. So I'm not in favor of it at all. So
Okay.
that's all.
Any other questions?
Ron, were there some questions that you had for
Hey,
Cassie?
Not to make you speak again, but when you did your first presentation, there are some responses they couldn't hear you. and I think they're concerned with steps we would take, protocols we would, the stuff you spoke down there. I don't want to lengthen this out, but there was some responses, they couldn't hear what you were
You
saying.
mean the protocol if someone turned up
Yeah,
positive?
I mean,
Okay.
how we would handle it, how you talked. I'm sorry to lengthen it out.
Okay, so I'm going to take this up. So I guess I'll just kind of do a quick overview of like if somebody were to get sick here at school, because it'll look a little bit different in the middle school, high school versus in the elementary, just because of what kids are capable of doing. So the actual nurse's office space in each building will be used only for well students. So students that take daily medication, maybe an injury, just kind of like those normal, healthy, preventative type care that I provide for kids. And then we have an isolation space designated in each building that is where sick students will be going. In the elementary level, a staff member or a teacher would contact the office or myself and report, that a child isn't feeling well. And myself or another designated staff member would go get the child and then go to the isolation space where I will assess that child. We do have like a designated staff member that can supervise that child if I'm needed in more than one space. And that person would not be within close contact of that child. The child would kind of wait and then they would remain 6 feet masked. I mean, there's a protocol for PPE. If that child is showing any of the documented symptoms of COVID-19, we would contact a parent or guardian, or if we can't reach them, we would move on to the emergency contact and try to get that child out of the building within 15 minutes. In the high school, we're still kind of working on the procedure, but I foresee it to be, either the teacher notifies us or we're even exploring an option of a Google form, since every child has a device where they can fill out a request if they need to come to the office or if they're not feeling well. And then that way we can field that, the teacher can call and say, hey, Johnny filled out that form, he's not feeling well, and then we know where that child should go. Do they go to the isolation space where I can assess them, or are they well and can go to the high school? Because we really want to minimize that contact with that sick child with anybody. As far as if someone comes up positive, I've gotten a lot of questions about, if somebody gets sick in a classroom, do you immediately isolate people? The only people that we would remove from class in the event that somebody gets sick here on site would be household contacts in the immediate. If a student or staff member tests positive, then as far as the school district, we start kind of gathering that information for the Department of Health of who close contacts could be. And then we provide that information to the Department of Health. They'll tell us if they want us to send a notification out right away, or there's a regional group or regional contact that might assist us in that too. But we don't decide who to start contacting. The Department of Health will kind of work through that with us and then decide who needs to quarantine, who doesn't. They might not, it might not be the whole classroom, Johnny sits way in the back, Susie sits here, they never really have close contact. They might not have to quarantine, it would maybe just be the few people around. It's hard to say in every situation, it's gonna vary. A high school situation is gonna be very tricky because those kids move from room to room. An elementary situation may be a little different because they have a pretty small cohort and they stay with that cohort most of the day. So I can't say who's going to have to quarantine, who's going to have to isolate, but the Department of Health will help us walk through doing that contact tracing. But they've kind of made it clear that they really need our assistance right off the chute to save that time, so they don't have to go digging. We can upfront say, okay, these are all the people that this student sits around, this is who their locker is by, this is who they sit by on the bus, and then we can provide contact information so they can make those contacts. We may send out a notification to the people that aren't having to quarantine, but maybe we're in the same space, just to say, kind of, Ryan refers to them as the Oregon Trail letters, like where we send a letter that says, kind of like strep, your child may have been exposed to strep, but that they would get a letter saying, there was either a case in the classroom or your child may have been exposed and then we notify that way. But anybody identified as a close contact would be notified very quickly and given specific guidance on what they as individuals need to do.
The name of the origin of it will never be shared, just like a staff member. That's private data.
We will not share any identifying information. The Department of Health has different rules, and I'm not sure exactly how and what they share. I think it's typically just you were identified as a close contact to someone with COVID-19. Usually they know who it is by that point, because I think in this climate right now, people understand the importance, and they may start when you get tested and you test positive, that facility may say to you, kind of retrace your step for at least the last 48 hours or the 48 hours from when you became symptomatic, and then, start contacting people around you so that they can start quarantine at that time. And it may not be a day or two later until they get notified by the Department of Health, but the quicker you can get that quarantine in, the better. Any questions?
Perfect, thanks for doing that again.
Oh, perfect.
I told you that guidance that came out last week is attached on the last page, and if you want to look at it right now, I also emailed it to you, but for people not here, it is also in this presentation. So, special services. So in our conversation last week, I figured out a gap that we had that I wanted to make sure and educate you folks on, and that's special services. That includes IEPs, 504s, and ELL services. Those will be expected to be continued throughout the duration of the year. Distance learning, we learned a lot from. We probably have a gap or had a gap in our IEP services there. And so now we've been given guidance that there will be contingency plans developed that will be able to address how that's going to look at the beginning of the year. You'll know then as you move to hybrid, these are the services that you should expect. And then distance learning, these are the services. So they are calling that a contingency plan that will be part of those IEP meetings. So a big part of this too is making sure that our general education teachers make sure and are applying those accommodations and service time. So there's got to be a connection between them, the paraprofessionals, case managers. All three of them need to work together. So those are all included in our staff expectations that they will do that throughout the year. We're expecting regular communication with our parents, especially those on IEP, because we know that those can tend to fall through the cracks. We need to make sure and establish and maintain those as best we can, because they do represent some unique sets of challenges, especially during distance learning. Transportation, we're still working out the details of that. We now have a blue or a maroon and a gray afternoon bus route to try and get some students out. We're going to have kind of a staggered release so we can create some more capacity on our buses so that students aren't here too long. But the latest pickup from the building will be 3:25 at this point. Questions about transportation? I skipped over special services. Questions about special services? Nursing and health, we talked about the screening. We will screen staff members. We will not be the ones screening the students. We're going to ask that the parents and families do that, monitor and report to us any symptoms or problems so that we can make a decision upon if they should be included or participating on site for education or not. We're going to try and do some mitigation here in terms of helping ourselves. Every little thing we can do to try and decrease the number of positive cases is going to help. We talked last week about proper hand washing. Hand washing is much more effective than hand sanitizer, so we're going to spend some time teaching that. There'll be signage around the building talking about what symptoms to look for, hand washing. Both principals talked about the 6-foot spacing, etc. So those will be located throughout the building. We will survey our parents so we know their choice, whether they're choosing distance learning or on-site learning for the year. That will go out this week. We have made that, I shared that in your weekly update last week. That will go out to the parents. I've asked Crystal to roll that out tomorrow morning. Food service, BRE, we have met with Marlison Food Service. We'll be able to serve hot lunch if we're in person for BRE students. I know there were some questions about sack lunches last week, so we re-examined that. We believe we can serve hot lunch to all of our elementary students on a staggered schedule and keep some spacing, wipe down the tables in between cohorts. So that's a good thing. But if we do go to any adjustments, hybrid for BRE, they'll go to sack lunches in their classroom. So we'll start off the year trying to do that. Hopefully that's a positive thing for our students. Middle school, high school, Ryan talked about the grab-and-go breakfast as they come in, hot lunch in person, and they'll eat in cohorts if we're in a hybrid. So trying to break them up and space them out. We will do a trial run next week and see how that looks in terms of how much the gym will need to have set up in order to offer that. We'll revisit the closed campus as part of that incident command team. There will be no self-serve options during lunch hour, so all of it will be served to them. Last spring, we were able to serve all students free lunch. That will no longer be available. That will be based upon application for this fall. So it's called an educational benefits application, also known as a free and reduced lunch application. That will have to be filled out to reevaluate whether people qualify for free lunches or reduced price lunches. These meals for distance learning students will be able to be picked up at our site. We will not be able to deliver them. We just don't have the resources to deliver those meals on top of getting students here. Couple operational considerations. Visitors and vendors will be expected to wear masks, limited access. If people want to come in, they're going to have to comply with our mask requirement. Staggered use of communal spaces. Communal spaces would be like lunchroom, used to be the auditorium, but those big areas where we're going to have different groups visit. So we're going to stagger that so there's some time in between. We will be able to communicate our changes to scenarios. I'm hoping if we do have to do any distance learning for, say, one third grade class, we can do that pretty quickly. If we have to change system-wide, we will have some time. They're talking a week or two to be able to make those changes. But it's all dependent upon the rate of positivity in terms of the community also. The principals have talked about modifying their open house. We think that's a big part of it, and trying to do some things that are curbside. Lisa, you want to just briefly touch base on what yours might look like? Yellow.
As far as open house for the elementary, I've talked about preschool and kindergarten. Our goal would be to be able to get them into the building on a very structured schedule so that we do not have a lot of outsiders coming in at the same time in an effort to keep staff and students safe. As far as the rest of our 1st through 5th grade, we are actually we are working with the middle school, high school to put together a full YME kind of an evening outside, working out the details, but what we're looking at is having I believe the middle school, high school is looking at maybe a 4 to 7 kind of stop and go. Burt Rainey is actually going to be doing some Meet the Teacher out on 7th Avenue, where we will be organized by grade level, and that way students that left us in the spring can come by and say goodbye without getting out of their vehicles, and also they can visually see who their teacher will be for next year. It's one way that we thought we can at least touch base with our students. We're anticipating, you know, first grade signs, where the first grade staff is, and so forth. So, any questions on elementary? Kind of looking for a rah-rah session. And
So they can match up a name with a face too. so.
absolutely, and it'll be fun to be able to do that with middle school, high school. So you can kind of do the circle of the block and see all kinds of crazy things, I'm sure. Okay, thank you.
Pray for no rain.
Yes.
Oh, no lightning.
Anything for Ryan? I think, you know, he kind of explained that during his session, his part. So, PPE, the state is providing a bunch of PPE for us. We're also acquiring our own, which include additional face masks and clear see-through masks when that's needed. They're quite expensive, so we're going to be a little bit tight with those. Coming up with them, much less the expense of them, is a challenge. Washable gowns last week, did you get them ordered? Not yet. So we're going to try and acquire them. Disposable gowns, and as many as we're going to have to use, are just not a real option for us because they're quite expensive, and we would go through several of them in a day. So if she can get our washable gowns for students receiving direct services, that will be important. Educational options. Parents do have a choice for distance learning. There is a distance learning enrollment form. I attached a link to it there in the slideshow. We're going to ask that we know their answer by August 17th. So not a lot of time here. We want to know that so we can start making our plan. It will include information about their distance learning decision, childcare, technology, and transportation needs. Childcare, it's a beast for us. We're still working through the details of it. Tier 1 employees will receive that. So if we were to go to distance learning, we will have to provide them with childcare. So we're hoping, knock on wood, we can stay in hybrid or in person as long as we can, so we do not have to provide childcare. The incident command team involves, I sent out an invitation today. That date for the first meeting is August 18th at 5 p.m. when we will meet. We'll meet in this room here so we can spread out as much as we can and kind of talk about what the different scenarios will look like and take a look at the data. This crew would help make a recommendation for a base learning model to begin the school year. Staffing, we know there's going to be additional expenses associated with our staffing for this year. We're expecting to be able to use the CARES money for that. There may also be additional money. We're hoping the county will help us out too with some, help us offset it, because both the county and the city, the municipalities were given quite a bit of money to try and help out. And I know they want to help out the businesses, but we could sure use some help also. Unfilled position, we just have a custodial position. We filled our industrial tech, our middle school ELA science position. We filled tonight also, so we should have paraprofessionals. Francis is interviewing custodians tomorrow. Technology later in the agenda. We'll talk about the hotspots and Khajiit. I'm making a recommendation that we purchase 20 of them. That's the smallest increment, smallest quantity we can get with that plan. We'll look to try and get devices, so if we do have to go to distance learning K through 3, we will have devices available so we can at least do some synchronous or live teaching of our lower elementary students. Communication, we'll use our normal avenues in terms of JMC and email, along with text messages for our families if we do need to make a change. Are there questions about what I've rolled out there? That is basically a summary of what's in my document that would go forward. We have a couple different avenues we can pursue here if there are no further questions. We can choose to approve our reopening plan as is, and then still have that incident command team look at the data, and that will help us establish a base learning model to go off of. We would like to be able to establish our base learning model as in person. I think that's what most people want as much as possible. So we could approve what we have there for our reopening plan and go forward with that, or we can table it and meet back again in 2 weeks where we would have even more information, and then we could adopt the plan and the base learning model at the same time. The choice is yours.
So explain the difference again between the plan and the model.
Models, the plan is going to include all 3 models.
Okay. So the model is like the broad.
No,
The model
the
is
plan is the broad, which includes all 3 models. There are 3 models. The distance learning model, the hybrid model, and the in-person model. We're going to pick one of those as our base model. Right now, if we were to pick them, our data would show us to pick in-person for our elementary and hybrid for our secondary. And so we have those 3. All 3 of those are part of our reopening plan.
No, Rich, our model could change based on.
Our data.
Well, not even that, but what happened on Saturday with our insurance and what the inspector finds. Could that change things a little bit as well?
I would say that's a separate thing. I would say we have a COVID plan based upon these 3 models, and then we have a storm plan based upon the other.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't know enough about what's going to happen with this building to choose that
Right.
yet.
So we can choose the COVID plan tonight, and then based on the findings, choose the weather-related plan when we get that information? Or?
No, I'm not asking for a weather-related plan,
We're not
because we have no idea what the building's
Right.
going to tell us. So let's not commingle.
Not what.
So we have a reopening plan. Do you like it or not? All right. If we need to do more research, more homework, that's fine. We'll re-examine it. We'll redo that plan. Come back in 2 weeks. We're going to look at the model. That's the biggest thing, to choose the model. That's the incident command team's responsibility, is to choose the model, the base model. They're going to choose it. We can run with that, whatever they choose, or we can come back in 2 weeks and make a board action of our model.
Well, in 2 weeks, would we discuss the incident command team's recommendation and then go from there?
In 2 weeks?
Yeah.
That is a way to do it.
Is that
Yes.
what you're asking?
That is one way of doing it.
But I think Mrs. Hanson kept saying that this plan includes both models.
This
Correct?
plan includes all
3 models. All 3 models.
All 3 models. Her, in-person, and hybrid are virtually the same thing.
So we could approve the plan, because that won't change depending on the model,
Is that correct, Rich?
right?
Correct.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing too.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure.
So the plan's not going to change
Change it.
unless you want me to make changes to the plan that I
Yeah.
shared with you. If there's some gaps in it, lack of information, an area that wasn't addressed that you thought should be addressed in our plan that we'll communicate to our stakeholders, we can do that.
So we could approve the plan tonight, and then the
Correct.
incident command team meets and picks the model, and then in 2 weeks,
Correct.
we make action on that.
We can do that. Yep. Understand, the only thing that the MDE is asking us to do is to approve a plan by board action.
And I think we need to do that tonight.
How much adjustment can be made in the plan once we approve it?
We can reapprove it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's
If
kind
we
of-
find something we don't like in it at a later date, heck, even in 2
Well,
weeks.
by board action, it would take board action to
Yeah.
change
I mean-
something in the plan?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so, but I would think we're going to try and find something pretty major before we change it. Hopefully I wrote it with enough details, but if you find a gap in it at any point, it should be addressed.
Well, we could consider it, a living plan, right? Because if we start putting it in action and we find parts of it aren't working, then you
Yep.
won't.
Then bring it back, yeah.
It's a living document. Yep.
Okay. Hearing all that. What, it already is an action item, so,
So the
So we could-
resolution that we have in the agenda, that
Doesn't have to be used.
That would be in 2 weeks. We could do that.
Correct.
Okay.
so as an action item, we've already got it an action item, so would there be a motion to approve the YME Return to Learning Plan tonight?
And can we state the plan, Rich? Can you say the plan, like, it's what you have in the whole report right here?
The plan, this slideshow
Is
is
the
a
plan.
summary of it. That's not the plan. The plan is an actual document that, if you look on the second page, has a letter in it.
Okay.
What's that document called? Is it the reopening
Reopening
schools?
plan.
Reopening plan.
The YME reopening plan.
Of 3 different models, correct?
Actually, it's called the YME Return to Learning. My bad.
YME Return to Learning Plan, like it is in the agenda.
Yes, my bad.
So do you need
Trying
a
to,
motion
trying to coach you
approve
through
that?
emotion here, Sonia.
Well, I'm getting there, Sharon, I'm getting there. Do we need a
Yep.
motion to approve that? Is
We
that
need
what-
a motion to approve the YME Return to
I will
Learning
make a
Plan.
motion to approve that plan.
Okay. There's a motion to approve the YME Return to Learning Plan. Is there a second?
I will second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, we got 2 outstandings, obviously the campus one, and 2, we don't know where the Lutheran Church stands. So we're about to vote on a plan without having, the Lutheran.
But that's part of the different,
That's
that's part of the different plan. That's the weather issue. We're just talking reopening, the return to learning.
Correct, Rich? Am I saying that right? That would be a completely different, separate.
Yes.
The lunch thing would be in the model, not the whole big picture plan.
Well, according to this, it's part of the plan, though, according to the PowerPoint that we're looking at. It says it right in there, part of the
Yep.
plan.
Let me look and see
Yep.
if it's,
So are we talking the
if I
plan,
put it
Sonia, or are
into
we
the
talking
plan
something else?
itself.
Where do you see that, Jeremy?
This whole thing. Down to the YME reopening plan.
Mm-hmm.
But is that
Under-
plan dictating which room we use for or which space we use. for
I
this
actually
class.
don't have it in my YME Return to Learning dash 2020 plan.
The,
Nothing about open campus.
the presentation you,
The presentation is not the plan, it's an overview of the plan.
The plan is just the distance, the hybrid, and the in-person. It is confusing, but if I
PowerPoint you
understand it-
presented is not, has got things in it that are not in the plan.
It's an overview, okay, yes.
So what we're trying to approve is just the distance learning, a hybrid, and the in-person. Correct? Those three things. That's it, not digging deep. Because those would be models.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
The incident command team will determine the model. In this plan,
Or you can table it.
appropriates,
And then in 2 weeks, you can have both of your answers.
we have a motion and a second.
Yep.
So if there's
Be
any other
voted down.
discussion, I will call for a vote.
I'm just still a little confused on it, so.
Okay.
it doesn't matter.
I was confused on it, that's why I asked the question. Plans, models. Okay, any other discussion?
We asked families to decide if they're going to distance learn by Monday if we don't have a plan.
Well, then we will be way behind the 8 ball in getting things done for our principals.
We just said that we're going to ask, send this out tomorrow and ask families to decide by Monday.
If we vote, we'll have a plan tonight.
So what you're saying is we really
Vote
should
on it
have
tonight.
we really should have the plan before we decide, have them decide. Yep,
We need a plan tonight.
excellent point. Excellent point.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Next item is approval of environmental health and safety management services proposal for fiscal year '21.
Okay, so we used to use Musser Environmental, and he no longer services our area, so we picked up IEA, and so this is the contract that would be approved and we would use for their services.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the environmental health and safety management services proposal for fiscal year '21 from IEA?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is approval of sale of athletic fields in Clarkfield, Minnesota.
Okay, Sean Duth?
Duth?
Duth, is that how you say it?
Duth.
Francis, yeah, Sean Duth is purchasing it to use. He's going to put it into an LLC. His intent is to use it for, to build storage facilities and et cetera. So I think it's a good option for us and to find a reasonable use of that property.
Mhm. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the sale of the athletic fields in Clarkfield?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is the purchase of the Khajiit hotspots.
Okay, so fairly pricey situation. I'm recommending that we sign up for 12-month purchase of these. At the end of 12 months, we'll actually own the devices, and then we'll be able to roll it over into using just regular Verizon. The advantage of using Khajiit is they have a relationship with Verizon that allows us to get unlimited Wi-Fi access. And so that's pretty powerful if we're going to use a lot of video. So this would bring up our total number of devices to 30. Total cost of this would be $12,595.24.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the purchase of the 20 Khajiit hotspots?
I'll make that motion for the
Thank-
purchase.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
What have you heard from people that leads you to think that we need the other 20?
Just
Feedback-wise.
knowing, I think a lot of them last spring just kind of gave up on it, and because we were so late in the game, we weren't able to get them hotspots. We weren't able to get hotspots. It took us about a month to get them when we finally jumped in. Plus, if you look at one of our proposals for our elementary kiddos is to also provide those students, our K through 3 students, with a device at home if we were to go distance learning. And this will give us that access.
Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that some of this will be,
We
could use this, the
Gears.
The GEARS Act,
GEARS is part of it.
the governor's.
It's the governor's portion
Portion.
of the CARES Act.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 9.6 we did already. 9.7 is to approve the income contract for Minnesota West. This is an annual agreement, I understand.
Correct. What we normally do is we have to pay $3,300. Great example of the $3,300 would be the PSEO class we have here. What, English 4, would that be an example?
Through Midwest, we offer two classes. One is a survey for chemistry, which focuses on the medical realm. And we have a
So, but we would only have to pay $2,800 for each of those courses. We host it, use our teacher. With the other ones, I believe with the SMSU, we pay $3,300 for each of those courses. So this is, we save $500 per course.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the income contract for Minnesota West?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ron. There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. That ends the item 9. Item 10 is our policy update. Tonight we have our first reading of policy 808, our COVID-19 face covering policy.
So that
And-
is a policy from MSBA that they've sent out. It just kind of outlines how it applies, what the consequences are. Each of them, this is a first reading. We could have the second reading in 2 weeks.
Yep. We do not approve it tonight. This is just the first reading. my understanding is we do not have to have a
Yeah,
policy,
so-
but my feeling is it just gives a little more emphasis on the fact that it needs to be, it allows Cassie and administration to enforce it because we've made it a policy. Okay, any questions on that?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Tonight is just first reading, so we'll approve it in a couple of weeks. But thank you for your generosity there.
No problem.
Okay. Item number 11 is our discussion items. Number 1 is board vacancy. So I think we talked about this at our last meeting about, had a couple people interested in filling that vacancy. Remember, we could not come to a majority agreement. So, anybody else have any thoughts?
My
We did.
thinking now is that we're already in August, and it's a 30-day wait period. And so, do we bring someone on now, or do we just wait until the election?
I think
Yep.
last time we talked, we were pretty certain we wanted to add a 7th individual.
I did send out questions. Am I the only one that saw the
I
answers?
sent them out
to
an
everyone?
email today. I forgot to get them on to the,
Okay,
I only saw one set of questions,
there was only one.
there was only one.
and that was from Steve.
Yeah.
So, is Don no longer interested? Or did she just want to send questions back?
She did not answer the questions, so, my feeling is right now, to bring someone new on board would be difficult, especially with what happened this weekend with the storm damage, and to get them up to speed. It would take Rich a lot of time. I think that his time is spent better dealing with the storm damage and getting all that coordinated, getting the school ready, getting the learning plan and process in play. And I think, we don't need 7, but
So
it
why-
would take.
Why has the opinion changed since the last meeting when we were pretty sure we wanted 7?
Well, for me, what happened was this weekend, was the storm damage. I'm concerned with Rich's time and having to, catch a new board member up to speed with all that's happened and, communicate all that. That's my thought. I think. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the second party is waiting till the election.
So we're down to just one interested person.
In being appointed.
And 30 days, correct, is what, if we decide tonight, they would have to wait 30 days?
So we could wait, so if that person was chosen tonight, it would be, first board meeting would be September 14th.
Which
Would
would,
be eligible.
was that the case last time though, correct? Because there wasn't 30 days between that
Correct.
meeting and this meeting, so it would have still been September, so the net effect was 0 change.
Right.
Is this a motion thing, or can we just discussion, or where do we sit on this, or how do we?
From a discussion, you can make a motion.
Well, we did discuss it last month, so do we need to move it to an action item, or is this?
That's an option.
Okay. So we would need a motion to move it to an action item if someone so chooses.
I'd make a motion to move it to an action item, especially given down to one candidate.
So what are we moving to an action item?
The
The dis-
appointment of the one individual that's interested in the
Okay.
position.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
Would be a roll call vote. Start with Ron.
Ron Winter, yes.
Jeremy Corner, yes.
Sharon Rupp, yes.
Sonia Peterson, no.
Jeremy LeBlanc, yes.
Amanda Lisi, no.
Okay, motion carries to move that item to an action item. So now that it is an action item, we would need a motion then to approve that. To approve that, what's the word I'm looking for? To appoint? To appoint
Steve
to the board
Johnson.
vacancy.
Make a motion to fill that board vacancy with
Stephen Johnson, yep. That sounds right. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'm just going to say it's going to be difficult to bring somebody new on with all this stuff that's going on, so.
It's difficult any time, I feel, to bring a new board member on. When Ron and I came on, we were in the middle of, six-figure cuts to our budget and trying to get up to speed, but we managed our way through it.
And that was, yeah.
Guidance.
But there's no time for
That-
that person to go through phase one or phase two or
I guess we hadn't at that point either because they
anything
weren't
like
billed.
that as well, correct?
Yeah.
If we have people interested, I feel it's our duty to add somebody.
Yeah. And the election is not that far off either.
And we had that conversation last time, too.
Yep.
We were still pretty
Yep.
adamant we wanted 7, with all the decisions we had to make.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve Stephen Johnson, right?
Correct.
Okay. To fill the board vacancy, and I would like to do this as roll call vote as well.
Ron Winter, yes.
Jeremy Corner, yes.
Sharon Rupp, no.
Sonia Peterson, no.
Jeremy LeBlanc, yes.
Amanda Lisi, no.
Okay, motion does not carry. So, do we want to? We have no other option, but just, we can bring it up again next month, maybe, or? Okay. Yeah, then it would be 1 month. Okay. We did, moving on to 11.2, we talked with Insight Restoration already. Don't know that there was any correspondence.
Not that I.
Okay. Upcoming events, we will have then a second board meeting of the month, August 24th, correct?
Correct.
To approve the model, and that will, because that will be after the incident command team meeting. Next regular board meeting will be September 14th. Anything else?
Would that meeting on the 24th be at 6 PM? Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you.
And where?
Let's, do you like this?
Little theater?
Setup?
I do.
Okay. I wish there was a way I could get that projector, but we'll keep brainstorming.
First day of school is
September 8th.
September 8th. Okay. Hearing nothing else, call the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, folks.